The author of this fanfiction name is Fanatic06. He works on fanfiction.net and the link is in the description to the stories.
Chapter 43, The Chateau Chatelaine. The group was only a few minutes away from Saffron City right now. What would have taken over a month on foot was only taking about 5 hours on the blimp. It was a surprisingly comfy ride the whole way. There was good food, a few movies that played, and it was extremely smooth, as well. It was a little on the expensive side, but it was definitely worth it. The group couldn't really complain due to how little money they spent on Cinnabar Island. Blaine really extended his generosity to them by letting them stay at the hotel for free their entire time there. He even led them to the place where the blimp took flight to see them off in the blimp that morning and wished them the best in all of their endeavors. The group, in turn, wished him luck with his gym and finding more worthy challengers. They definitely had an unforgettable experience on Cinnabar Island with all that happened, but now that part of their journey was behind them. It was time to move forward and return to Saffron City. Ash looked out the nearby window of the blimp from his seat and was able to see a large city in the distance which he knew to be Saffron. Pikachu hopped up from Ash's lap to his shoulder to get a good look out the window, too. Serena was sitting next to him while Brock and Misty were in the row ahead of them. Serena was watching Ash with a look of worry as Saffron City came closer. She was wondering what his feelings were upon coming back to the large city. Saffron City, Ash muttered with an unreadable expression as he began to recall the events that happened last time. Like with Cinnabar Island, the group had an unforgettable experience in Saffron City the last time they were here. However, it was because it was filled with many negatives rather than positives that made it unforgettable. Last time they were here, Team Rocket had been attempting to take over the entire city by raiding the Sylph Company. The group had been able to stop them from completely taking over, but it wasn't without its consequences. Team Rocket still got away with the blueprints for the Master Ball, and that is when they declared Ash a personal enemy of Team Rocket, and there would be consequences should he see them again. Not to mention, Ash had absolutely been destroyed by Sabrina when he was last here. His poor buddy Pikachu had been critically injured that time and even suffered a broken arm. It was true they were much stronger than last time, but what if Sabrina had gotten stronger, too? Ash was so fired up about returning to challenge Sabrina again, but now that he was almost back in Saffron, it was like his fire had disappeared. For the first time, he was extremely worried about an upcoming gym battle. He frowned and let out a sigh. Ash, Serena asked once she saw his troubled expression. Ash turned back from the window and gave Serena a small smile, but she could tell it was forced. I'll be fine, Serena. I guess I'm a little nervous about coming back here. Serena grabbed Ash's left hand with her right and gave it a reassuring squeeze. I know. You went through a lot last time you were here. It's only natural you feel apprehensive about returning. I just wonder if I have what it takes to beat Sabrina. I know my Pokemon are strong enough to beat Sabrina, but am I strong enough? Ash asked with a sigh. Ash, you are strong enough. You are one of the strongest people I know. If you want an example of how strong you are, I can tell you one that happened just a few days ago. There aren't too many people out there who could take on an Aerodactyl face to face like you did. That takes a strong person to be able to do something like that and capture it. Not to mention, you have Pikachu, your other Pokemon, Cubone, Brock, Misty, and of course me to support you, Serena said seriously. Haha, yeah. I do a lot of crazy things, don't I? Ash asked with a light chuckle. You do. Just know that I'm here for you, ready to jump in those crazy things with you or to be your support, Serena told him before leaning against his arm. Ash felt his face heat up once again when Serena made contact with him. It was normally the other way around with him trying to reassure her. It looks like the relationship works both ways, also. Ash could always count on Serena to make him feel better, just like she could with him. He finally flashed Serena a genuine smile. "You're right, Serena. I can do this. With you and everyone else by my side, I can pull through," he said. Serena looked up from Ash's shoulder to his face and smiled back. "That sounds more like the Ash Ketchum I know." "Pika Pie," Pikachu added. It gave Ash a determined look and sparked its cheeks. It was ready to get a piece of Sabrina again. "You said it, buddy. We're going to win this time," Ash shouted as he stood up from his seat and pumped his fist in the air. Ash then noticed everyone around him in the blimp was staring at him with a confused frown. It looked like he had said that a little too loudly. Brock and Misty were looking away with slightly embarrassed looks while Serena was watching him with a small smile like she wanted to giggle. Pikachu and Cubone were both snickering at Ash's embarrassment. It seemed Cubone was starting to take on Pikachu's characteristics. The flight attendant made her way over to Ash and gave him a slightly stern expression. "Sir, I must ask you to please remain seated for the remainder of the flight since we are about to land," she said. Sorry about that," Ash muttered awkwardly as he sat back down. The group stepped off of the plank from the large blimp and drew in their surroundings. Even though this was their second time here, it still blew them away with how large it was. The skyscrapers were just as amazing this time as the last. Luckily this time, they knew their way around the city so it wouldn't take them forever to find their destinations. "Hey guys, I was thinking about something as we landed," Ash spoke up. "Oh really? Like what?" Misty asked. "I just had a gym battle with Blaine yesterday. My Pokemon are still probably a little tired from such a tough battle like that. I don't want to push them, so I think it would be best if I didn't have a rematch with Sabrina today," Ash explained. "I think that is a rational decision, Ash," Brock agreed with a smile. "You don't want to push yourself or your Pokemon. It would be good to get a nice rest so you are charged up for the next battle." "In that case, what should we do today?" Misty questioned again. "Well," Ash said as he gave a knowing smile at Serena. "If I recall, a special someone has reached the rank of Duchess at the Battle Chateau and can challenge the Chatelaines there. I think it would be cool to check that out." "Ah, that's right. Serena still has to compete for her title of Grand Duchess," Brock remembered. "Do you feel up for it, Serena?" "I don't know. It sounds like a big jump. It's almost like it's the Battle Chateau equivalent of the Pokemon League, only you already know who you are facing," Serena said nervously. "Serena, remember what you told me on the blimp? You have all of us and your Pokemon supporting you. We all know you can do it. You don't even have to face the battle Chatelaines all at once. Just go at your own pace," Ash encouraged. Serena stared back at Ash and gave him a smile. "You're right. Thank you, Ash. I have a question about these battle Chatelaines," Misty spoke up with a thoughtful expression. "I hear there are 4 battle Chatelaines, and 5 battle chateaus. How do they know when to face a challenger or where to be at?" The group exchanged glances with each other upon hearing that. It seemed like they couldn't come up with a decent response. The Battle Chateau of Saffron City hadn't changed a bit since the group last saw it. This was where Serena had gone up against Miette in the final tournament. Her Eevee had its first taste of battle here, and Jigglypuff had finally overcome its extreme stubbornness. Now however, they were here for a different reason. Serena wouldn't be participating in a tournament today. No. She would be facing off against one of the leaders of the Battle Chateau, a Chatelaine. "Welcome to the Battle Chateaus, beaux and dames," Hennessy greeted as usual once he caught sight of them. "Hello again, Hennessy," Serena smiled as she and the rest of the group approached them. Who will be competing in the tournament today? The older gentleman asked politely. Actually, I've finally achieved the rank of Duchess. I would like to try for the chance of challenging one of the chatelaines, Serena answered as she showed him her symbol and title card in the case as proof. That is truly excellent, madam. Allow me to congratulate you personally on achieving such a feat. You are actually in luck today. We do have a chatelaine visiting today. Nita is her name. I shall have one of my maids inform her at once. Hennessy said with a smile. He then snapped his fingers to one of the maids behind him who nodded her head and quickly hurried off to where the chatelaine supposedly was. Is there anything special that I need to do to get ready? Serena asked once the maid had left. Yes, madam. For now, however, just get ready as you normally would. I will escort you down to your changing room. Please follow me, Hennessy said as he began to make his way down the hall, the group following suit. Deciding to get an idea of how tough the chatelaines were, Serena decided to ask, so how many people so far have faced the chatelaines? Has anyone ever beaten them all? Indeed. There have been a few people who have managed to beat them in the past. They were very exceptional trainers indeed. Our most recent winner was a young man by the name of Callum Xavier. He was a very exceptional trainer indeed. Our chatelaines are no pushovers and will definitely be one of the hardest trainers you have ever fought against. An inexperienced trainer could never win, Hennessy explained. Callum Xavier? Serena inquired, having her interest piqued by the name. That must mean he reached the rank of Duke. She had wondered what her native Kalos friend was up to lately. Ah, yes. You must know him, I take it, Hennessy continued. He is a very polite and fine young man. That he is. Serena agreed with a light giggle. Unbeknownst to her, Ash made a slight frown on his face after hearing the name and Serena giggling about it. He then had a frown from confusion this time. Why was he acting this way when Callum was mentioned again? Yes. He was one of the few trainers who managed to best Nita, Hennessy said. I see, Serena muttered. She was briefly wondering what Hennessy meant by a few. The battle chateau hasn't been opened that long, but how many people have been able to win that fabulous prize that they have mentioned if you manage to conquer it? Did Callum manage to beat all of the chatelaines? Come on, Serena. You can do it. I don't know how strong these chatelaines are, but you can do it. Ash encouraged Serena while giving her a thumbs up and take the subject away from Callum. Hennessy then reached the intersection where different changing rooms split off and asked the rest of the group to wait while Serena got ready. A maid quickly came and escorted Serena off to her changing room while the rest of them waited. Ash decided to watch Kibone while she was away briefly. As Serena was being led down the hallway, she had many thoughts running through her head. What kind of person was the battle chatelaine here? How should she treat the leader? Does she curtsy? Does she get down on one knee? Does she salute? Furthermore, which of her Pokemon should she use against the chatelaine? There was no doubt the chatelaine used strong Pokemon, so she would need to use some of her stronger Pokemon also. Charla, Jigglypuff, Scyther, and Hitmonlee were all good candidates, but Nidorina, Gloom, and Eevee weren't bad choices, either. She didn't feel Slowpoke or Omenet were ready for a huge battle like this yet. Arg. These decisions were so hard. Lovely as always, Serena. Brock commented with a smile once Serena returned. Definitely. A real princess. Misty added. Hee hee. Come on guys. These are the clothes I normally wear when I'm here. Serena giggled. Ash, meanwhile, couldn't take his eyes off Serena. She was right. These were the clothes she always wore. Why was this time any different? Maybe Ash never really took the time to notice how beautiful Serena looked, especially when she was dressed up. Was it the way her long hair moved as she walked? Was it her lovely blue eyes? Was it her, okay, he won't go there, but this was the first time he was actually taking in her appearance. It felt really weird, yet so right. Ash? Serena asked once she saw him staring at her. It wasn't like she minded because she had always wanted Ash to look at her like that. She knew she had to snap him out of it eventually, though. A jolt seemed to pass through Ash once Serena called his name. Huh? He asked stupidly. Pikachu and Cubone began to burst into a fit of laughter. Ash Ketchum, the dense boy who started out this journey without a clue in the world, is finally starting to notice girls. This was too good to pass up. Pikachu had to laugh at its trainer's expense. It seemed that Cubone was finally starting to loosen up, too. Pikachu had taught it well these past few months. Laugh it up, fuzzball, Ash muttered as he glared at the yellow rodent. Attention bows and madams. We now present, the battle chatelaine that is visiting here today, Nita. Please show your utmost respect. Hennessy announced. All the people, trainers, and chateau workers alike, instantly stopped what they were doing and immediately entered into a bow or curtsy. The group quickly started doing the same so as not to look foolish. It really did seem these chatelaines required a great deal of respect. As they looked around, they could see two maids walking on either side of a person in the middle who they assumed was the chatelaine. As they got closer, the group could begin to make out the chatelaine's features. She was dressed in a yellow and black tank top with black pantyhose and pale yellow high heels. She had on a massive olive green dress that's around her middle and opened up slightly towards the front. Lastly, she wore black gloves on her hands and a big orange hat on her head. The group resisted the urge to raise an eyebrow at this. She was dressed in quite a bizarre fashion. Even Ash, who had no sense of style, knew this was a rather strange choice of wardrobe. As she entered the room, the group could see she was a small lady, but not as small as yellow. She had curly yellow hair that went down the side of her face and stopped just below her cheeks and yellow eyes. She seemed to have a very big smile on her face. The maids then began to lead her in the direction to where the group was standing. She would give a slight nod to the maids, butlers, and trainers as she passed, but not much else. The chatelaine soon stopped in front of Serena while the young girl continued to curtsy, not knowing what else to do. She began looking at Serena in an appraising manner which was starting to make her feel a little nervous. It was like the chatelaine was judging if she was even worth battling. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. The group was expecting formal, elegant words to come from her mouth like Hennessy talked, but instead, "Hello. How are ya? Are ya in good form? I'm Nita. Welcome to the Battle Chateau, pet." She greeted with a heavy accent. The group exchanged glances with each other. They certainly weren't expecting one of the leaders of the Battle Chateau to sound like that. She was rather quirky. Pleased to meet you, Ms. Nita. My name is Serena Gabina. I would like to request a match with you, Serena said with another curtsy, trying to keep her composure. Sure. That sounds like smashing good fun. It's been a while since I've had a battle. Nita replied eagerly with her hands on her hips. She then added, I may be the youngest of us four chatelaine sisters, but I'm still a class trainer. My sisters are always on to me about that and getting stronger. So all of the chatelaines are sisters. Serena thought to herself. She briefly wondered if they all acted same or had completely different personalities. Misty, however, happened to catch what the chatelaine said and immediately spoke up. Oh. You have 3 older sisters of status, too. I know just how you feel. Misty said as she clasped her hands together. Oh. And who might you be, pet? Nita asked while raising an eyebrow. I'm Misty. I'm one of the sensational sisters at the cerulean gym. I'm the youngest of 4 sisters, too, and they are always getting onto me about not being as good as them. Misty replied. It's so tough being the youngest. It is, isn't it? I'm always catching it from my sisters whenever I don't battle hard enough, particularly my eldest. I always feel like I have a lot to live up to. Nita added while looking at Misty with a smile. I think Misty just found a new best friend, Ash muttered to Brock and Serena so Misty couldn't hear. I hope you put up a great match so you can really show your older sisters you are just as good as them. Misty continued. Misty, not to cut into your conversation, but shouldn't you be rooting for Serena? Brock reminded. Oh. Ha 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 ha. Right. Misty replied with a nervous laugh while rubbing the back of her head. Well, if we are done with this lovely chat, I'd like to begin our match, Nita said a little eagerly. Yes, ma'am. Serena hurriedly said. Hennessy. Be a gent and lead us to the battle room. Nita said while turning to him. Right away, madam. Hennessy replied as he turned around and began to lead them. Nita took the front while the group walked behind her. They figured it was the appropriate thing to do. The group noticed that Nita definitely seemed to carry an air of authority around her in the way she walked, despite the way she talked and dressed. She wore her head high with one hand on her hip while the other one moved in tune to her steps. Her hips swayed side to side as she walked. Brock was unknowingly turning red from staring at the woman's backside. It seemed he found another girl to be attracted to, but he forced himself to be in check for Susie and Vulpix. Not to mention he could have sworn he felt Kabuto's pokeball wiggle a little bit. Only Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny seemed to make him go gaga anymore. Brock wanted to be a one-woman man, but there were 3 perfect girls for him right now. He couldn't decide. Once they arrived at the battle room, Nita made her way over to the other side while Serena stayed on the entrance side. A judge was already waiting in the center. The room they were in was a little different compared to the one used for tournaments. It was a lot larger for one thing, and there was only one entrance compared to the normal 2 that were used on each side. The group figured it made sense that battles with the Chatelaines were held in other places so as not to disrupt the normal tournaments going on that day. Nita stood confidently on the other side of the room with her hands on her hips, awaiting for the rest of the group to watch from the side and the judge to start the battle. Okay, Serena. You've got this, and you're a duchess. You've come this far. I know you can do it. Ash told her with a thumbs up. Cubone bone. Cubone added as it hugged Serena's leg. We're behind you the whole way. Brock said with a smile. Maybe you could, never mind. Good luck. Misty said cheerfully. You know I really want you to win. Serena nodded her thanks as she went over to stand where she was supposed to, but Ash stopped her. Hold on, he said, grabbing Serena's attention. She turned back towards him and blushed when he took her hand and planted a delicate kiss on it. That's for luck, he said with a smile and turned to head back to the sidelines. Serena blushed heavily. It was like he was mimicking her motions that she did during his Cinnabar gym match. Sure, it was on the hand rather than the cheek, but still. That was the first kiss Ash ever gave her, anywhere. She felt like she could faint. Just that alone gave her a huge surge of confidence while a huge smile spread across her face. She turned away as well to continue to her place, now with a newfound sense of determination. Ash actually kissed her. Once Ash made his way back he saw Brock, Misty, Pikachu, and Cubone staring at him with a knowing smile on their faces. Ash then blushed a cherry red. Ehehe. Well, Serena wished me luck in the Cinnabar gym by kissing me. I figured I would repay the favor by doing the same for her, even if it was on the hand, he said. Sure, Ash. Whatever you say, Brock replied with a sneaky grin. KN knock it off, guys, Ash muttered as he turned away to hide his red face, however unsuccessful it was. Once Serena stood in her designated area, the judge made his announcement. This will be a special match today. We have Serena Gabina facing one of our chatelaines, Nita. Rather than a one-on-one battle, it will be 3-on-3. There will be no time limit. May the two madams please curtsy to one another. As Serena did her curtsy to Nita, she couldn't help but feel a little strange once Nita did one, too. Were the chatelaines not excluded from the typical curtsy before a battle even? Though they were the leaders. You may now choose your first Pokemon. The judge declared. Serena thought hard about which one she could use first. She knew Scyther had been itching to battle ever since she caught it. Maybe using it would be able to calm it down a little bit. It would certainly help if it would stop going after Ash all the time. She's had to call it off multiple times since she's had it. Go, Scyther. She yelled. She threw the ball forward. The mantis Pokemon appeared and began viciously swinging its blades back and forth, slashing at invisible enemies. It gave a dark smirk at Ash as a glint appeared in its eye. Before turning to face which Pokemon Nita would send out, Ash couldn't help but gulp. That Scyther really made him nervous, almost like it was out to get him. Go Clefable, dear. Nita shouted as she threw the ball forward. Everyone gasped once they saw the extremely rare fairy Pokemon appear. That was quite an achievement to have such an elusive Pokemon. They remembered they saw a few at their trek across MT Moon a while back, but to see a trainer actually have one was pretty impressive. Each trainer will use a total of 3 Pokemon. They will each battle until one of them is unable to battle anymore. Then the next 2 Pokemon will take their place. The Dame with the most victories will be declared the winner, the judge explained. Are you ready? Let's make this a smashing good battle, pet. Nita called to her. I agree. Serena answered back. Grand. Let's do it. Nita said. You may now begin. The judge announced. Okay, Scyther. Let's start things off with your agility and follow with wing attack. Serena yelled. Scyther immediately took off from the ground and started speeding around the room. It was almost like Scyther was teleporting due to how fast it was moving. It then began to move towards Clefable and stretched its wings to get a good hit in. A smashing good way to start a battle, but Clefable and I have tricks of our own. Disarming voice. Nita yelled. Clefable then let out a loud cry. The sound waves seemed to blast across the whole room as even the group had to cover their ears. Scyther got the brunt of it though, as it had to halt its agility and tried to cover its ears also. Disarming voice is a move that never misses. It's perfect against a fast Pokemon like Scyther, Nita smirked. Scyther's speed is its greatest asset. If Nita is going to use disarming voice every time it uses agility, I'm going to need to think of something else, Serena thought. Use Moonblast. Nita shouted, snapping Serena out of her thoughts. Quick. Dodge it, Scyther. Serena yelled as a large beam came from Clefable. The Mantis Pokemon immediately shot out of the way and dodged it just in time. That Moonblast was a much faster attack than one would think. Fly high into the air and use Razor Wind. Serena yelled. Scyther then flew as high as the large battle room would allow it and began manipulating the air around it with its wings. It began to spiral it around before shooting towards Clefable. It was as if the air itself was a blade like its arms. Dodge it, Clefable, my pet. Nita shouted. Clefable jumped out of the way but still caught the force of the explosion as the Razor Wind hit the floor. It lost its balance and landed ungracefully on the floor while Scyther closed in for another attack. Air Slash. Serena ordered. Scyther brought its blade-like arms up before slashing at the air around it to send a sharp column of air directly at Clefable. The fairy Pokémon was hit directly by attack and blown into the air again where Scyther could get to it easier. Fly over to it and use wing attack. Serena shouted. The Mantis Pokémon did so and outstretched its wings before knocking Clefable to the ground. The fairy Pokémon landed on its back with a painful cry as Serena decided to deliver the finishing attack. Finish this off with X-Scissor, Serena commanded. Scyther closed in as it drew its blades into an X shape as they began to glow. It looked like victory was going to be for Serena as Clefable was doing nothing to get out of the way. That was until something completely unexpected happened. Clefable, use gravity, Nita said. What's that? Serena wondered. Clefable's eyes glowed blue for a moment as Scyther was almost upon it. The Mantis Pokémon suddenly felt that the air was extremely heavy for no apparent reason. It was like an invisible force was weighing down on top it and pulling downward at the same time. Unable to stay in the air any longer, Scyther sunk to the ground extremely quickly. Its X-Scissor attack faded from the shock, and it hit the ground before skidding to a stop right in front of Clefable. Moonblast, pet! Nita shouted. Clefable once more shot the large beam from its hands which blasted Scyther back a good distance. It hit the ground with a painful groan. It attempted to stand up and take flight again, but was unable to because the air felt so heavy. Why isn't Scyther able to fly anymore? Ash wondered aloud. That's because Clefable used the move Gravity, Brock said with a frown. It makes the air extremely heavy around its target so it's unable to fly. That's really bad news for Scyther because on top of not being able to use its speed, it can't even fly now. Come on, Scyther. Try to fight it? Serena encouraged. Scyther was really struggling to take flight again. Its body wasn't made to be very fast on the ground like it is in the air. If it was going to make progress, it would need to fly again. Try air slash, Serena yelled. Scyther tried to slice at the air with its arms, but the force of the gravity immediately made the column of air sink to the ground immediately. Not even its flying type moves were working. There was only one other option despite being a long shot. Use double team to try to confuse it, she yelled. Scyther immediately split into several images of itself and began moving as fast it could run around the room. Clefable, meanwhile, didn't seem too phased. Use disarming voice to find the real one, Nita yelled. Just like before, the Clefable let out a loud cry which immediately spread around and hit Scyther, instantly making its copies disappear. Use Moonblast one more time, Nita commanded. The large pink beam was blasted from Clefable which shot across the room and struck Scyther right in its midsection. It was knocked backwards on the ground where it fell again. And didn't get up. SCY, it muttered. It was extremely frustrated that it couldn't pull off a win for its first match. Scyther is unable to battle. The winner of that matchup is our Chatelaine, Nita, the judge said. That was smashingly good, Clefable, no guff. Nita praised the fairy Pokémon as she returned it. Poor Scyther. It was doing really well and managed to get an advantage, but the second Clefable used gravity, everything changed, Misty noted. Return, Scyther, Serena said as she recalled it. She then gave it a sad smile. Thanks for a terrific battle. That was great. Now who could she use? These battle Chatelaines were clearly on a whole other level from the trainers she has faced so far in the battle chateau, even Brock, and he used to be a gym leader. She had traded out Hitmonlee and Nidorina for Slowpoke and Scyther in an attempt to know them better, but those two were also some of her strongest Pokémon. But they couldn't be used right now because they were at Professor Oak's lab. She, of course, couldn't just halt the match to get them, but she felt Slowpoke wasn't ready to fight yet. She had a choice between Charla, Jigglypuff, and Gloom. After some thought, she made a decision. Jigglypuff, I choose you. Serena yelled as she released the pink puff ball. Jigglypuff appeared from the poke ball, but unlike usual, it didn't wave to an invisible crowd and pretend to be a star. It really looked like it wanted to win for Serena right now. It looks like it really was ready to listen from now on, after all. Ah! A wee little Jigglypuff, eh? Let's see how they do against Hypno. Go, pet! Nita shouted as she released the psychic Pokemon. It stood on two legs and resembled a tapir. It was pale yellow in color with white fur around its neck and carried a pendulum. Hypno? Serena questioned as she pulled out her Pokédex. Hypno, the hypnosis Pokemon and the evolved form of Drowsy. The pendulum it carries has the power to hypnotize anyone in a short amount of time, said the Pokédexes. Your wee Jigglypuff can't beat Hypno, said Nita. Serena and Jigglypuff couldn't help but let out a smirk. That was a big mistake to underestimate Jigglypuff's strength just because it wasn't fully evolved and cute looking. It beat opponents many times bigger than it several times. Even if it didn't win, Hypno certainly wouldn't walk out of this battle unscathed. Hypno. Use hypnosis. Nita yelled. Hi Hypno, Hypno said in a sleepy voice as it began to emit purple waves from its body that moved towards Jigglypuff. Counter that with your hyper voice, Jigglypuff. Serena yelled. Jigglypuff then let out a very loud cry as sound waves burst from its mouth to counter the hypnotic waves from Hypno. It then inflated itself and took to the sky so it could fight. Better now that gravity was no longer in effect. Use your pound, Jigglypuff. Serena ordered. Counter with your pound, Hypno. Nita yelled. Jigglypuff descended upon Hypno with its fist while Hypno prepared to attack as well. Both of the Pokemon's fists collided with each other and began to compete for dominance. Jigglypuff let out a strain and pushed through it before smashing its other fist right into Hypno's stomach. The psychic Pokemon stumbled backward several steps before doubling over in pain. What? How was your wee Jigglypuff able to overpower Hypno? Nita exclaimed in shock. Jigglypuff is a lot tougher than it lets off. We're not going to let another Pokemon outmatch its strength. Isn't that right, Jigglypuff? Serena asked. Jiggly. It responded with a giggle. That won't be a problem. Use poison gas, Hypno. Nita yelled. Hypno then began to emit a foul-looking brown cloud from its mouth that began to cover Jigglypuff. It started to cough violently due to how nasty it was. Hold your breath, Jigglypuff. Try to get out of the thick cloud. Serena yelled. Jigglypuff began to look frantically for a way out of the brown cloud, but it was so thick. It then saw a dark figure appear inside the cloud, and its eyes seemed to glow. Even though Jigglypuff knew it was Hypno, it still made a frightening presence. Use Psychic. Nita hollered. Psychic waves then burst through the cloud of gas before slamming into Jigglypuff and knocking it off of its feet. Jigglypuff rolled a short distance in front of Serena but quickly stood up. The attack wasn't particularly effective, but it still took Jigglypuff by surprise. That's okay, Jigglypuff. We can still pull through. Serena encouraged. Is that so? Use poison gas again, Hypno. Nita retorted. A toxic brown gas once again came from Hypno and began to surround Jigglypuff. The pink puff ball began to hold its nose in an attempt to keep from being poisoned. This gas was so disgusting, however, that made it hard. Plus, it knew it would have to breathe sometime. It once more saw the dark figure of Hypno emerge into the cloud of gas. Jigglypuff wasn't going to let it attack first this time, however. Fortunately, Serena wasn't going to, either. Use pound, Jigglypuff. Serena yelled. Jigglypuff hurried forward with the attempt to smash Hypno again, but it did something unexpected. It held up its pendulum and began swinging it back and forth. Jigglypuff halted its attack and began following the pendant's movements before stopping completely to watch. Back and forth. Back and forth. Back and forth. It was so captivating. Oh, no. Hypno's got Jigglypuff under its control through its pendulum, Brock muttered to the side. Can it break free? Ash asked. It's possible, but it would be extremely hard. Think back to whenever Pikachu was under Kadabra's confusion attack, Brock replied. Ash grimaced as the thought returned to him. He still remembered how much agony the yellow rodent was in. It looked almost impossible to break free of. It managed to get out of Abra's through sheer luck when his aura came to him, but the second time. Pika-Pie. Pikachu asked its partner. I'm fine, buddy. I was just thinking about something, Ash answered. Pikachu didn't buy it but decided to let the matter slip. It turned back to watch the battle to see how it would turn out. It hoped Jigglypuff would find a way out of it. It wasn't before long that Hypno began to emit psychic waves from its pendulum that struck Jigglypuff continuously. Despite not being very effective, the constant barrage was beginning to take its toll. Jigglypuff was still transfixed with Hypno's pendulum as it watched its movements, though. It was like it was completely oblivious to taking damage. If this kept up, Jigglypuff would be knocked out without even knowing what hit it. Jigglypuff! Snap out of it! Serena yelled to her Pokémon. Puyuuf, it muttered as it watched the mysterious movements of Hypno's pendulum. It was so alluring. It thought it heard a girl's voice screaming out to it from far away, but it wasn't really important, was it? It then looked at Hypno's face, and the psychic Pokémon pointed its finger to its pendulum to keep Jigglypuff focused on it and not Serena. Come on, Jigglypuff! Serena yelled again. What was that sound Jigglypuff was hearing? It sounded familiar. The voice sounded very worried. What was it worried about? Staring at the pendulum was so relaxing. It felt like its body was getting weaker, but it didn't know why. All it knew was if continued to stare at the pendulum, all of its problems would go away. Wait. What kind of logic was that? It felt like it was beginning to hurt all over. It wasn't getting more relaxed by watching the pendulum. Jigglypuff saw waves being constantly emitted from the pendulum. It was those waves that were harming it. Seeing that it was losing control, Hypno began to swing its pendulum faster in an effort to get to watch again, but Serena didn't let that happen. Jigglypuff! Serena screamed again. This time, the dazed look on Jigglypuff seemed to snap back to a normal look as it blinked in confusion. What was it doing? No, that wasn't important. What was important was it had a battle to win. Hypno, meanwhile, stumbled back at losing control and looked temporarily stunned. That was Serena's chance. Use Mega Punch, Jigglypuff! Serena yelled. Jigglypuff inflated itself before flying forward and smashing its fist right in Hypno's face this time. The psychic Pokémon stumbled backwards again and tried to shake itself from the pain. For such a cute-looking Pokémon, Jigglypuff hit a lot harder than it looked like it could. Use Hyper Voice! Serena ordered next. Sound waves once more blasted from Jigglypuff's mouth as the Hypno covered its ears with its hands in an effort to drown out the noise. It liked nice and quiet things. It couldn't stand loud noises. Follow with Rollout, Jigglypuff! Serena continued. Jigglypuff began to spin extremely fast in midair before shooting forward and colliding with Hypno once more. Hypno was knocked off its feet this time and soared through the air, before landing in front of Nita where it didn't get up. It had been knocked out. Hypno is unable to battle. The winner of this matchup is Jigglypuff. The judge announced while waving his flag in Serena's direction. You did it, Jigglypuff! Serena said happily as Jigglypuff turned towards her and nodded its head. It looked exhausted but otherwise okay. I guess Jigglypuff was able to fight through Hypno's control by Serena constantly getting its attention. Serena's bond with Jigglypuff was stronger than Hypno. That's really impressive, Misty smiled. Yeah, Ash muttered. He could probably learn something from those two for his future match against Sabrina. Jigglypuff was able to break free because of its bond with Serena. It reminded Ash of how Pikachu was able to break free of Abra's control the first time because it and Ash had connected through aura. If he could find a way to connect with Pikachu again, it might be able to resist confusion. Nita returned Hypno and smirked at Serena. That was smashingly superb, Serena. I see now that you are definitely worthy of your rank as Duchess. There aren't too many lads and lasses out there that can defeat any of my Pokemon. We are tied now, and you need to defeat my last Pokemon. Are you ready? I am. Serena stated as she returned Jigglypuff to give it a good rest. Crackin' good. Go Dragonair! Nita shouted as she released it. Dragonair? Serena asked in surprise as it came out of the Pokeball. Dragonair was a long, slender, dark blue Pokemon that resembled Dratini. It was a lot longer, however, and had a horn on its head and what looked like wings for ears. It gave a shrill cry to signify it was ready for battle. Whoa, Ash muttered in shock that a Chatelaine would have another of such a rare Pokemon. Were all the Chatelaines like this? Serena took out her Pokédex to scan it to learn more. Dragonair, the dragon Pokemon and the evolved form of Dratini. It is a mystical Pokemon that exudes a gentle aura. It can change the climate conditions, informed the Pokédexes. Serena took a deep breath as she thought of what Pokemon could go against it. Gloom and Slowpoke would be at huge disadvantage against the dragon Pokemon. With Scyther and Jigglypuff already having battled so far, there was only one other option. Her first Pokemon. Go, Charla! She cried as she released the fire Pokemon. Charla gave a mighty roar once it was released and stomped the ground. It was prepared to win its first fight as Charizard just like its boyfriend was. As if on cue, one of Ash's Pokeballs wiggled and Charizard came out. It gave an encouraging roar at Charla before giving it a thumbs up. It seemed to have adopted that trait from Ash. This is definitely going to be an intense fight, Brock noted. Begin. The judge yelled. Quick Charla! Use fly! Serena yelled. Charla gave a mighty roar before taking flight and shooting upwards into the sky. Het! Trying to stay out of the way of Dragonair's attacks, are ya? That is fine. We will just prepare when we can attack. Use Dragon Dance! Nita shouted. Dragon Dance? Serena questioned. Dragonair began to do strange movements with its body as it started to glow. Serena didn't notice much of a difference until Brock shouted out to her. Careful, Serena. Dragon Dance is a move that increases the user's attack and speed. You don't want to let Dragonair do too many of those. He warned. Upon hearing that, Serena decided to act. Go ahead and attack Dragonair, Charla, before it can use Dragon Dance again. Charla gave another roar before dive-bombing Dragonair at top speed. Use Hyper Beam! Nita shouted. Neutralize it with Flamethrower! Serena countered. Both Pokemon launched their respective attacks at one another. They collided in midair and began to compete for dominance. All the while, Charla continued to fly forward in an effort to push the Hyper Beam back and get an advantage, but it was proven quite difficult due to the power of Hyper Beam. The attacks finally created an explosion in midair as a tie, but Serena wasn't going to let up. Use Metal Claw while Dragonair can't move! She shouted. Charla flew forward within the smoke and lit up its claws for a Metal Claw before slashing at the immobile dragon type. It then grabbed Dragonair by the tail and slammed it. Down on the ground like a whip. The dragon cried out in pain as it got its senses back before shaking itself. Aquatail! Nita shouted. Before Charla could fly away, the long-bodied dragon type caused the end of its tail to be enveloped in water. It then swung its tail forward and crashed it right into Charla's stomach. The fire dragon roared in pain before soaring backwards several yards and landing on its back from the super effective hit. "Are you alright, Charla?" Serena asked with worry. Charla gave a low growl before standing back up to still fight. "You know that Aquatail had to do a lot of damage, especially after being powered up by Dragon Dance," Misty said. "Heh. Your Charizard is pretty quick, but not quick enough to escape Dragonair. We still need to match it in power. Use Dragon Dance again, Dragonair," Nita said. Knowing that she couldn't let Dragonair get another attack like that in, Serena had to give a quick attack to stop it, preferably a long-range move since Charla was a good distance away. "Use Flamethrower," Serena shouted. Charla quickly charged up its flames and released them as fast as it could in an effort to stop the Dragon Dance. The attack succeeded in hitting its mark as Dragonair was enveloped in fire, but it still completed Dragon Dance by that time, raising its attack and speed even more. "Use Dragon Rush, pet," Nita yelled. At amazing speed the group didn't think was possible for such a long creature, Dragonair shot forward and crashed into Charla extremely hard. Charla gave a roar of pain as Dragonair hit its stomach before reaching its arms out and catching Dragonair to keep it from getting away. It once again took serious damage, but still held fast. "Use Metal Claw, Charla," Serena yelled. The fire dragon once more prepared to slash at Dragonair, but it was quicker this time. "Use Wrap," Nita countered. Before Charla could react, Dragonair redirected its body skillfully and began to wrap around Charla, effectively cutting off its metal claw. Dragonair's long body was tying it completely up. It was covering its arms, legs and even face to where it was completely immobile. "Try to break free, Charla," Serena frantically yelled. Charla was trying to wiggle free with all of its might, but it was no use. Dragonair had left it to where it could hardly move, and it was just getting tighter. If this kept up, Charla would lose consciousness, and she would lose the match. There had to be something she could do. "Think, Serena," she told herself. What were all of Charla's moves that might make Dragonair let go? It couldn't use any physical attacks for sure. So what were some special attacks? Flamethrower might lack the coverage to fully make Dragonair let go. Also, she doubted that Charla would be able to get any attacks out of its mouth anyway. Wait. There was one other move that might work. "Use Inferno," Serena yelled. After some struggling, Charla soon became engulfed in an intense fire, taking Dragonair with it. Dragonair tried to keep hold, but that fire was really intense. The blue dragon cried in pain before quickly letting go of Charla due to the heat, and Serena once saw an opening. "Use Fire Punch," she yelled. Charla reared its fist back and punched Dragonair with a fiery fist as hard as it could, sending the Pokémon soaring backwards across the room. As it weakly got back up, Dragonair seemed to grimace in pain and double over. It had been burned due to Inferno's automatic secondary effect. "That's awesome. That really puts Serena at an advantage now that Dragonair has been burned," Ash commented. Charizard gave an approving roar before giving a thumbs up to Serena and Charla. "Yeah. Normally Inferno is an inaccurate move, but since Dragonair was completely wrapped around Charla, the move was sure to hit," Brock explained. "Great job, Charla." Serena smiled. Charla gave a tired nod before turning back to Dragonair. Just because it got an advantage, it still had taken heavy damage. "This isn't over yet. Use Twister," Nita yelled. Dragonair seemed to concentrate before spinning extremely fast, which caused a bunch of wind to whip up around it. It wasn't long before the wind seemed to become a full damaging vortex. Dragonair then pushed it forward as it began spiraling towards Charla. Charla grimaced as it saw the twister approaching. It would be almost impossible to avoid due to having nowhere to fly in the closed room. If it was an open stadium, it might be able to fly away, but not here. Such were the disadvantages of battle rooms. Nita must have known this. Serena knew there was only one thing she could do: try to outmatch the twister itself. "Flap your wings as hard as you can, Charla," Serena yelled. Charla took a deep breath and began flapping its wings very quickly in an effort to break apart the winds from the twister. It didn't seem to be working as the vortex continued to ruthlessly come towards Charla. Seeing as how that wasn't working, it began to grit its teeth and sweat as it flapped its wings harder than it ever has before. It was making huge gusts of wind that everyone in the room was beginning to feel and roaring while doing so, as symbol to how hard it was working. Still, the twister continued to come towards Charla. The fire dragon shut its eyes for what looked like the end, but something unexpected happened. The twister actually changed direction. "What a crock!" Nita exclaimed. Charla opened its eyes and smiled to see the vortex was now going towards Dragonair this time. The blue dragon, meanwhile, had an extremely shocked look on its face as it saw the vortex coming to it now. Deciding to add power to the vortex, Serena smiled and shouted, "Use fire spin on the twister, Charla." Charla blew a series of flames from its mouth that began to spin around quickly before entering the vortex of wind. Soon the fire spin and twister became one deadly move as it was now spinning massive vortex of fire. Charla then continued to flap its wings faster to speed up the twister's movement. Dragonair could do nothing but watch as it drew closer and closer. Even though it had used Dragon Dance twice, it still wouldn't be fast enough to get out of the way in time. The fire twister soon met its mark and a big explosion took place. Everyone had to shield their eyes from how big it was. Dragonair was soon shown blasting into the air covered in various burns, flipping several times, and Serena knew now was her chance to finish this. "Go and grab Dragonair while it's stunned and use seismic toss," she cried while smiling. Charla roared and shot forward into the sky as the long-bodied dragon began to fall back to the ground. It then caught it and began taking it as high as it could into the room and spun around to pick up speed. This was it. The group began watching in anticipation as Charla began coming back towards the ground at high speed as it prepared to throw Dragonair. It looked like Serena was about to win the match, until Nita said her next command. "Grab that Charizard around the neck, Dragonair," she yelled. Dragonair once more repositioned its body just before Charla was going to throw it. It then wrapped its long body around Charla's neck and began to choke it, taking it completely by surprise. Charla struggled to breathe, and it had loosened its grip around Dragonair and stopped the seismic toss so it could try to pry Dragonair off of it, and that's the opening Dragonair needed. It soon swung its body in an upward arc, taking Charla with it. It then released Charla for a throw of its own. The fire dragon went soaring towards the ground. And Charla slammed onto the ground and roared in pain. It then looked up and saw Dragonair descending with its tail becoming enveloped in water, and its eyes widened as it saw what was about to happen. "Aqua Tail," Nita ordered. "Counter with Metal Claw," Serena yelled. The Aqua Tail slammed into Charla just as it swung its glowing claws upward and they connected with Dragonair, knocking it backwards. Dragonair landed a short distance away and slowly pushed itself back up, Charla doing the same. Both Pokémon were panting heavily, not able to take any more hits. They were both glaring at each other as if silently daring the other to give in first. Finally unable to stand any more, Charla fell to the ground defeated. About 5 seconds later, Dragonair fell over due to its burn. Serena lost the match by 5 seconds. Both Pokémon are unable to battle. Due to Charizard falling first, Dragonair is declared the winner. The match goes to our Chatelaine, Nita. The judge announced. Serena simply stood there, absolutely crushed that she had lost, and she was so close, too. She distantly heard her friends approach her but didn't pay much attention to them. She gave a huge sigh as she suddenly felt a pair of arms wrap around her. She turned around in the embrace and saw that it was Ash. Despite losing, just having Ash show that affection to her made her feel at least a little better. She leaned into the hug and just stood there resting her head on Ash's shoulder. Charizard made its way over to Charla and held its claws out to it for it to take. Charla strained as it took Charizard's claws and was pulled to its feet. Charizard then dusted it off, before growling encouraging words for it. Charla didn't look so convinced, however. It slowly looked off to the side, embarrassed. It really wanted to win in front of its boyfriend, but wasn't able to. That was a smashing good battle, pet. Nita said as she made her way over to the group. I haven't had a match that exciting in a good spell. You almost beat me. Your rank of Duchess is definitely deserved. If you are at another battle chateau I'm visiting, make sure to let me know. I would be honored to battle you again. Oh. Thank you, Nita, Serena replied as she shook the Chatelaine's hand. As she did so, she couldn't help but wonder that if all of the Chatelaines were this tough, would she be able to beat all 4 of them? They were on a completely different level of trainer from the other trainers she faced in the past, and it showed, too. She would have to get a lot better if she hoped to beat them. Don't look so down, Serena. It was really close, Misty tried to encourage as they left the chateau. Serena smiled at Misty to let her know she would be fine, but a weird thought suddenly occurred to her. What if she actually did manage to beat all of the Chatelaines and conquer the battle chateau? What would she do then? Was the battle chateau something she could continue for the rest of her life, like becoming a Pokémon master? She finally found something she liked, but how long would it last now that she was close? Deciding to push these thoughts away for now, Serena turned to address the group. Hey guys. What do say we head back to the Pokémon Center? Ash has a rematch with Sabrina that he needs to prepare for, she said. The group nodded as they left. It may not have ended favorable for Serena, but they hoped to turn things around with Ash. He wasn't about to let a repeat of what happened last time. As they walked, Cubone stared up worriedly at its surrogate mother's loss. It wished it was able to fight, too. Then it could give that mean old Dragonair a good beating for making its mommy lose. It wasn't satisfied with just sitting on the sidelines anymore. Its mommy had done so much for it, and now it was time that it repaid the favor. It wanted to fight, too. Cubone would definitely be talking to Pikachu later to teach it the basics of battling. Riley Ketchum was now at the home of Delia. It fairly late at night, and Delia had gone to bed a short while ago, but Riley wasn't ready to go to sleep yet despite how tired he was. It had been an extremely exhausting day. He had arrived at his sister-in-law's house yesterday morning after traveling for 2 days to get there as fast as he could. Delia, of course, had been surprised to see him on short notice, especially after she visited him on Cinnabar Island recently. Riley's grim expression immediately told her it was something serious, and she let him in without any more questions. Riley sat down on the sofa in the living room and let out a sigh as he thought back to earlier. It was an extremely difficult thing to tell Delia that she was in danger at the moment. This immediately drove her into many questions about how and why. Riley hated to do it, but he had to tell her the truth that Team Rocket was after her to keep Ash out of their way. Naturally, this upset Delia a great deal. She had cried for over an hour. Not because she was worried for herself, but because she was scared for Ash and how he got mixed up in the schemes of Team Rocket. At first, Delia had said that if taking her was what needed to be done to keep Ash safe, then so be it. Riley had told her that Ash would never forgive himself if she was harmed because of something he did. It was then Riley assured Delia that he would be here to protect her as long as she needed to. He then gave comfort to her by adding that Yellow, Rose, and Blue were in the middle of investigating Team Rocket in an effort to discover that Rocket Boss's true identity and take them down. Riley leaned back on the sofa as his eyelids began to droop. He was supposed to be hearing from Yellow sometime tomorrow to report if they found out anything. Then they could make their move. Rose had informed him earlier that day that Team Rocket appeared to be working on a top-secret project but was unable to provide any information about it due to trying to stay out of sight. To this day, Riley still didn't know where that woman could possibly get her information from. He supposed he would find out more tomorrow, though. For now, he just had to protect Delia. Team Rocket's fall would come soon after. Riley decided to make himself more comfortable on the couch as he brought out a book to read before going to sleep himself. Reading was one of his favorite things to do in his spare time when he wasn't training or traveling. He picked up the book and was just about to continue where he left off last time when he stopped. Something wasn't right. He sensed something. It was a presence that shouldn't be here. There also was something extremely unfriendly about that presence. His eyes snapped up in the direction of where Delia's room would be. That's where he felt the uneasy feeling the most. "Do you feel it, Master?" came a mysterious voice in his head from a dark corner of the room. "I do," Riley confirmed as he stood up from the couch. "Keep your guard up. I'm going upstairs to check on Delia." "Understood. I am prepared," the mysterious voice responded. Riley left the living room and turned to make his way up the staircase. Maybe it was nothing that he felt at the moment, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It didn't help matters that his partner had felt it, too. Before Riley could contemplate the matter further, there was a loud crash upstairs. It sounded like a window was being shattered. It was followed by a scream that was almost certainly Delia's. Abandoning all forms of caution, Riley immediately darted up the rest of the stairs as fast as he could and bolted to Delia's bedroom door. He reached her room and heard a lot of commotion before kicking it open. He entered the room as his eyes narrowed. It was just as he suspected. A Team Rocket grunt was holding Delia against his chest from behind as a shield while two other grunts were preparing to leave by jumping out the window. Upon seeing Riley, they let out a smirk. Well, look what we have here," one of the Rocket members said. "Let Delia go right now," Riley uttered threateningly. "Riley." Delia choked, but was slapped in the face by the grunt holding her. "Shut up. If you keep quiet, we may take you back to headquarters in one piece," the Rocket member barked. "Don't you dare harm her," Riley growled. "Heh. You think you can take us on by yourself? We're Team Rocket. You clearly don't know who you're dealing with," the third Rocket member smirked as he pulled out a pokeball. With the rest following him. "I should tell you the same thing," Riley replied as he began to glow blue. He then brought his palms close to his hands, and a small blue orb formed in them. He then launched it at the two Rocket members who weren't holding Delia. It created a small explosion which blasted them back into the walls where they slumped over. He's an aura user." "That's impossible," one of the two defeated grunts muttered in surprise. Riley then turned to the Rocket who had Delia but stopped. He now had a gun pressed up against her head. Delia was struggling to get free, but every time she did, the grunt seemed to tighten his grip. "Go on. Try to attack me. It will be the last thing this woman ever sees," the grunt said with an arrogant smirk. Riley hesitated. He connected his mind with his partner and called out, "Lucario. Now." A strange being burst into the room before suddenly appearing behind the grunt holding Delia. It was a bipedal canine-like Pokemon with black and blue fur with a long snout and ears that stood on its toes rather than feet and had 4 black appendages on its head. The grunt was so surprised that he didn't have time to react before the Pokemon known as Lucario charged up its fist and struck the rocket grunt with a force palm. The rocket grunt gasped in surprise before slumping to the ground in a heap, releasing his hold on Delia. Delia fell forward as the rocket let go of her but was caught by Riley. She looked up at him with pure terror in her eyes. Riley knew that Delia was no longer safe at her house. If Team Rocket came after her once, they would come after her again. He would have to relocate her. "Oh my gosh, Riley." Delia began to sob. "How did this happen? I'm so worried for my son right now." "Master. We shouldn't stay here long," Lucario warned. Riley nodded his head and moved to lead Delia out of the house. The evil presence hadn't left yet. There had to be more than 3 rocket grunts. He motioned for Delia to stay right by him as they left. They rushed down the stairs and through the living room, all the while keeping on alert or any more rockets that might have made it into the house. Once they got outside, he would release his Pidgeot, and they could escape that way. Riley pulled open the front door and his eyes grew wide as he was met with a gun pointed right at him. Bang! Delia screamed as Riley fell backwards in shock as fresh blood poured from the new bullet wound in his stomach. He couldn't believe something like this had just happened. He should have known better and had Lucario scout the outside before attempting to leave. How did he not sense a rocket was on the other side of the door? He truly did underestimate the criminal gang. He fell to the ground and looked up to see the one who shot him. "Heh. I'll be taking the woman." "Thank you very much," the 4th grunt said as he grabbed Delia and pulled her over to him. "You won't," Riley coughed out. "Huh. Sorry. I can't understand you. I'm going to be too busy killing you." The grunt mocked as he brought up his gun again. A sphere of aura came from seemingly nowhere, speeding straight for the grunt. His eyes widened as the aura sphere connected and blasted him off of his feet and he fell down, letting go of Delia in the process. Lucario was standing on the foot of the stairs with a look that could kill. It looked like it was charging up for another aura sphere. "Curse it all." The grunt wheezed as he pulled out his pokeballs. Wheezing. "Golbat. Take care of that thing." The 2 Pokemon were released from their Pokeballs and began to duel Lucario while Delia went to help Riley. Lucario was trying to make it over to Riley, too, but the 2 Pokemon it was facing made it impossible. "Delia, you have to run. Get out of here," Riley panted while sweating profusely. "But you could die. I can't just leave you," Delia cried. "I'll be fine. I have aura. The most important thing is keeping you safe. Just run to Professor Oak's lab and contact Blue. He'll know what to do," Riley grimaced. Delia looked like she wanted to protest, but the look on Riley's face was telling her he wouldn't accept no for an answer. With tears in her eyes, Delia sprinted from her living room door and into the night, leaving the severely injured Riley with the rockets. What is going on here? What will happen to Riley? What will happen to Ash? Delia thought frantically as she ran. As soon as she reached the end of her driveway, a figure stepped in her way, and she bumped into it. She looked up and saw a tall man with teal hair and slanted eyes, but the rest of his features were hard to make out in the dark. "You'll be coming with us now," Proton said in deadly calm as his eyes narrowed. Lucario then heard Delia scream again from outside and charged up its most powerful aura sphere yet before blasting back the wheezing and Golbat with all of its might, stunning them. It then darted out the door and frantically looked around for Delia, but there was no sign of her. It turned on its aura senses, and its head fell in dismay as it realized how far away she already was. Team Rocket had gotten away with Delia. Chapter 44, The Forgotten Smile. It was now late at night at the Pokemon Center in Saffron City. It was a few minutes past midnight to be exact. The lights were now completely off as all the trainers staying there had since gone to bed. Of course, just because all of the trainers were in bed didn't mean they were all asleep. Ash Ketchum, in particular, was wide awake at the moment. He was lying down in his bed with his hands behind his head as he stared at the ceiling. Pikachu was lying down right beside him as it couldn't fall asleep, either. They were both thinking the exact same thing, the rematch against Serena tomorrow. Pikachu, do you feel as if we are ready to take on Serena again? Ash whispered to the rodent so as not to wake Brock, who was fast asleep in the bed next to Ash. Chuyu, the rodent replied quietly. If Pikachu was completely honest with itself, it was a little apprehensive about facing Serena again, too. It still remembered how Kadabra had made a total fool out of it last time. It was completely helpless while under Kadabra's confusion attack. I see, Ash replied. It's strange. I was so fired up about going against Serena again, but now that I'm going to, I'm a little afraid. It's one thing to say I'm ready and act determined, but it's completely different to actually be ready, you know. Pikachu asked as it gave a questioning look to the raven-haired boy. I mean, I'm still going to face Serena tomorrow, but I need some fresh air, Ash replied as he slowly got out from underneath his covers and off the bed. He then took his black t-shirt off of the nightstand and slipped it before finding a pair of athletic shorts in his backpack and put them on over his boxers. He then slipped on his shoes before heading towards the door. Pikachu whispered as it followed Ash. Yeah, come on, Pikachu, Ash replied as the yellow rodent hopped onto his right shoulder. Brock was still sleeping away as Ash quietly opened the door and crept outside, making sure to be as silent as possible. One would think Brock is an extremely heavy sleeper due to how much work he does, but he was actually a pretty light one. It must have been from having to take care of his younger brothers and sisters for so long that made Brock able to wake up at any sound above a whisper so he could care for them in the middle of the night if the need arrived. Ash gently shut the door to his room and made his way down the hallway. Despite there being no lights on right now, there was still plenty of moonlight that shone from the window and lights from Saffron City to where he could see where he was going. He made his way into the dark lobby and out the back door where there was the open field. He remembered the last time he was on this field. He had battled Gary and his Growlithe with Squirtle. Come to think of it, Ash realized he hadn't seen Gary at all, or even talked to him since his last time in Saffron City. He wondered how his rival was doing. Did he have all 8 badges yet? It probably wouldn't hurt to call Gary on his poke gear soon to see what he had been up to. As Ash walked to the bench that was outside the Pokemon Center, he was surprised to see someone was already there. Actually, there were 2 others already there. One was a honey blonde-haired girl with beautiful blue eyes, and the other occupant was a small brown Pokemon with a large skull on its head who was sitting on the girl's lap. They didn't appear to be doing anything and just staring at the open expanse of land in front of them. Serena? Cubone? Ash questioned as he made his way over to them and stood to their right. The 2 quickly turned their heads in the direction they heard the voice and smiled when they saw it was Ash and Pikachu. Oh. Hey, Ash, Serena greeted. Mind if I join you? Ash asked with a smile of his own. Not at all. Please sit down, Serena replied as she motioned her hand to the spot next to her. Ash complied as he sat down and occupied the space next to them. He then gave a sigh before turning to face Serena. I take it you couldn't go to sleep, either, Ash guessed. Serena brought her head down and stared at the ground. No, I wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about the battle earlier with Nita. Is it because you lost? That was a really close match, Ash reassured. Serena shook her head. No, that wasn't the only reason. I was also just thinking about the battle chateau in general. What if I'm not able to beat all the chatelaines the next time I visit a battle chateau? It may take me a long time to beat them all. Why is that a problem? Ash asked in a confused tone. Well, you're almost done with your journey in Kanto. You only have 2 badges left and then the Pokemon League. Have you thought about what you are going to do after that? Serena asked. Well, Ash said as he seemed to be deep in thought, there are other regions besides Kanto that I'm sure have their own Pokemon League. It might be fun to explore other regions and see the Pokemon that are found there. That's why it's a problem for me, Serena pointed out. The Battle Chateau chatelaines are only at a particular building for a few days at a time. It isn't meant for something that is supposed to take only a year like the Pokemon League. I may end up separated from you in traveling if I can't beat the Battle Chateau in time. But you can't think like that, Ash told her. You have to believe you will be able to beat all of the Battle Chatelaines and conquer the Battle Chateau. I know you can do it. Even if I do conquer the Battle Chateau, what do I do then? Serena asked. What do you mean? Ash inquired. Even if I do conquer the Battle Chateau, I wouldn't have anything to do after that. You have a lifetime goal of becoming a Pokemon Master. I thought the Battle Chateau was something I could do for a while, but I'm trapped both ways. If I don't conquer it soon, I would risk not being with you while you went to different reasons. I could never ask you to stay in Kanto because of me. On the other hand, if I win, I will have nothing to strive for again. I will be just like I was when we started our journey together, Serena explained. Sullenly as she rested her face on her palms. So that's what you're really worried about, Ash realized. Yes. I really want to stay with you, Ash, but it looks like the only way I can do that is if I stop doing the Battle Chateau and leave it as a duchess. That isn't bad, is it? I still haven't found a goal I can do for the rest of my life, Serena said. Serena, look at me, Ash said. Serena knew by now that when Ash said that to her, he was being completely serious. She looked up from her gaze to the ground to meet his eyes once more. She saw the warm sincerity in his eyes that she always saw. She felt like she could just get lost in them. She truly did love Ash's eyes. She was also surprised when Ash took her hands in his and gave them a reassuring squeeze. Everything will be okay, he told her. I know it. No matter what happens, we will always stay together. I promise things will work out, even if we don't know how right now. They will. Trust me. Was it really that simple? Just Ash telling her everything would be okay and to just trust him? Can she really just leave things in the air like that? There were so many things she was worried for, and she still didn't know what she wanted her lifetime goal to be, whether she beat the Battle Chateau or not. Could she count on an opportunity to just present itself to her when she didn't expect it, like what happened with the Battle Chateau? Good things have happened so far when she just waited. They haven't come across that stage of their journey yet. Ash hasn't even entered the Pokemon League yet, so who knows? Something may come along by then. It didn't make sense to worry about it now since she hasn't run out of options yet. You're right, Serena finally said. Thanks for talking with me, Ash. I can always count on you to be there for me. You bet, Ash replied. Serena then surprised him when she leaned over and gave him a hug. She seemed to be doing that a lot lately. Then again, Ash did tell her to not be shy about her feelings towards him. He just needed a little more time himself. He happily returned the affectionate gesture she was giving him before they broke apart. Pikachu and Cubone smiled at the two as they watched. You know, Ash spoke up, just talking to you made me feel a lot better about my match against Serena tomorrow. You're nervous about it? Serena asked. I was, but after talking to you, I remembered that we are always there to support each other. We've got Pikachu, Cubone, and all of our other Pokemon, too, Ash replied. He really meant it, too. Serena was always telling Ash that he had a calming effect on her. It seems the reverse was holding true, as well. There was no one he trusted more to tell his problems with than Serena. I know you will do great tomorrow, Ash. You and Pikachu have gotten so much stronger since you last faced Sabrina. You've defeated a gym leader who had a recommendation for the Elite Four, and another one who has been a trainer since before we were born. You definitely have what it takes, Serena encouraged. Cubone added. It wasn't there when Ash first went up against Sabrina, but it had heard the stories by now. That was how its big brother Pikachu had its broken arm when they first met in Lavender Town. Even it could tell the two had gotten stronger since the time it's been with them. It believed in its daddy's and big brother's strength. Thank a lot, you two, Ash said gratefully. We can do this. He then turned to address Pikachu. Are you ready to get that 7th badge, buddy? Pika-Pie. It responded enthusiastically before letting out a sudden yawn with a sleepy expression. Ha ha ha. It is getting pretty late, isn't it? Ash asked as he rubbed the back of his head. We better get to sleep so we have enough energy for tomorrow. Ash and Serena then stood up from the bench and put their arm around each other as they walked back with Pikachu and Cubone behind them. The two didn't realize they were holding each other's hands with their free one. It just seemed to come automatically now. Here we are, Pikachu. Back at Sabrina's gym, Ash stated solemnly as he looked at the building. Chuyu, Pikachu replied as it stared up, as well. It was now the next day as the group stood in front of the building that housed so many bad memories the last time. Granted, it was when Ash fully realized his power of aura, but the bad outweighed the good by a long shot. Now they were back, ready to give another try, and the outcome would be much different this time. They could feel it. After Ash and Pikachu talked to Serena and Cubone last night, they were just as determined to win now as they were before. They could do this. So I see you're back, son, a voice said behind the group, startling them. They spun around to see none other than Sabrina's father standing there. He had a serious expression on his face as he looked at Ash expectantly. Yes. I am, sir, Ash replied. I've gotten a lot stronger since the last time we met. I know I have what it takes to beat Sabrina this time. It isn't like last time when it was just my pride talking. I truly do believe it this time. Sabrina's father seemed to concentrate for a moment as if he were deep in thought. He gave a hard stare at Ash. It was a little unnerving to have the man looking at him like that. Still, as he studied Ash's aura with his own psychic powers, he saw nothing but a fiery determination and power. Maybe he really could save Sabrina. I see you are, the man finally said. Go now, and win. I believe you can do it, also. You're not coming with us? Misty asked. Oh no. I'm not allowed to go inside there, the man replied with sigh. The second that Sabrina sees her mother or me, she will immediately cast us out. She doesn't want anything to do with us. That's so sad, Serena mumbled. Tears began to run down the man's face as he continued. I just want my old daughter back. The one who loved everyone and was always happy. I miss her terribly. The group couldn't help but feel great sympathy for Sabrina's father as they watched him cry openly in front of them. It must be such a heart-wrenching thing to lose your daughter. Like that. They couldn't possibly imagine what he must be going through right now. I promise you, sir. I'm going to do my best to help Serena, Ash stated seriously. You helped me discover my aura abilities, so I need to repay you. No, even if you didn't tell me of them, I would still help you. No man deserves to go what you have gone through. Thank you very much, young man. You have my support, Serena's father said between tears, and then with a bow, he teleported away. The group stared at the spot where the man was for a few seconds before turning around to enter the saffron gym. It looked just the same as it did the last time they were here. Only now, they knew what to expect. Round 2 was about to begin, and they were determined for the results to have a different outcome. The group passed by all of the various rooms as they made their way back to the gym room. Just like last time, there were people in each of the rooms who were presumably practicing their psychic powers. There wasn't a single sound in the entire place. It was like absolute silence was necessary for these people to concentrate. Nothing seemed to have changed from this gym since the last time they were here. Once Ash got to the set of double doors that led to the gym room, he paused. This was it. Once he entered, there would be no turning back. Ash? Serena questioned once she saw he wasn't going in. Nothing. Let's go, Ash sighed. Then taking a glance at Pikachu, the two nodded towards each other and pushed open the doors to go in. The room was once again pitch black as they entered. If they didn't know better, the group would think Serena is some kind of vampire with how much she was in the dark. Even her side of the gym was relatively dark compared to Ash's side when they battled last. Now that they were in, they just had to wait for Serena to show herself since they knew she would already be in here. Sure enough, the room was soon lit up again as they group saw a figure towards the back in the shadows. They knew that to be Serena by now. Serena levitated off of her chair like last time and floated towards the group. She soon landed on the floor and looked as emotionless as ever. The group would even assume she would give no sign of them ever meeting if it wasn't for her next sentence. You are back, she mumbled. I am. Ash declared, trying to sound as brave and determined as possible. I, Ash Ketchum, am here to challenge you again for a marsh patch. You cannot win, Serena deadpanned. Things will be different this time. I've gotten a lot stronger since you last saw me. I can stand up to your Pokemon and your psychic powers. Ash stated. Don't challenge her like that. She isn't one to show mercy, Brock warned. As if to answer Ash's statement, Serena's eyes glowed blue for a moment, and Ash felt himself on the receiving end of Serena's psychic powers this time. Ash was enveloped in a blue energy, and he felt himself crudely pushed to the ground by Serena's powers. He landed with a painful thud as he tried to get back up but found he was unable to. It felt like she was keeping him from moving. Ash! Serena cried as she, Pikachu, and Cubone went to help him, but Ash held them back. Don't help me, Ash grimaced. If he was going to prove to Serena that he was worth battling again, he had to overcome her psychic powers. Serena was relentless, however. In addition to keeping Ash from moving, she seemed to be causing him physical pain. He began to yell out from the torture Serena was giving him. Serena looked like she wanted to smack Serena square across the face for doing this to Ash, but Ash told her to stay back each time. He needed to overcome this. With a huge cry of defiance, Ash gave a mighty push and was soon on his knees rather than on his stomach. The rest of the group let out a surprised gasp that Ash was able to withstand this onslaught of psychic energy. Ash groaned as he struggled to stand up again, but that was easier said than done. It was hard enough to just get on his knees. He very slowly began to crawl towards Serena, who didn't let up on her stony gaze as she watched him. Won't falter, Ash stated as began to sweat. He managed to get one foot planted on the ground as he used his hands to start pushing himself up, gritting his teeth the entire time. Serena couldn't bear to watch Ash be in pain like this. Tears came to her eyes as she saw how badly Ash was straining himself. She wanted Ash to win a marsh badge, too, but she didn't want to see him hurt to get it. She was powerless to stop it, though. She just had to pray that Ash's will was stronger than Sabrina's psychic powers. With one last scream, Ash forced himself the rest of the way up. He then gave Sabrina a serious look that showed nothing but determination. He did it. He beat her in a contest of will. Sabrina's eyes stopped glowing blue while she narrowed her eyes at Ash. Ash was immediately released from her psychic hold once she did that and let out several pants that it was over. Just because he won didn't mean it didn't take a lot effort. Serena immediately ran over to help support him while Pikachu stared worriedly at its trainer to make sure he was okay. It seemed their contest had come out with Ash as the victor. Sabrina had to accept his challenge now. That was amazing. I didn't know Ash had it in him, Misty stated with a shocked expression. That's Ash for you. He's just full of surprises, Brock replied. Impressive, Sabrina said, but her expression and stony expression seemed to show she was anything but that. I will accept your challenge. Thank you, Ash panted. He wasn't going to let her get the best of him this time. He had all of his friends and Pokemon for support. We shall have a 2 versus 2 match this time. Do you find that acceptable? Sabrina asked him. This surprised Ash a little bit. He was expecting her to say another one-on-one match like last time. It seemed Sabrina really wanted to test that Ash had gotten stronger by using more than one Pokemon. Now, he would have more than Kadabra to deal with this time. I accept. Ash declared. Pikachu pie. Pikachu added. Come out Mr. Mime, Sabrina said in monotone as she presented a Pokeball. It levitated off of her hands and opened up to reveal a very odd-looking Pokemon. It was somewhat humanoid with a round white body and light pink arms. Its body parts seemed to be connected by white spheres. It had black feet that curled upward and what looked like blue growths for hair extending from the sides of its head. Mr. Mime? Ash questioned as he and Serena pulled out their Pokédexes to scan it. Mr. Mime. The imitation Pokemon. Its fingertip can harden the air around it to create an actual wall. It is skilled at miming from birth, the Pokédexes stated. I think I've got a great counter to that, Ash declared. Let's go, Haunter. The ghost Pokemon appeared from its Pokeball, laughing merrily as usual. It then floated in front of Ash and looked at him expectantly. Okay, Haunter. This is Sabrina, the really strong psychic type trainer I told you about. I really need your help to defeat her so I can win a marsh badge. Can I count on you? Ash asked. Haunt. Haunter replied as it pounded one of its disembodied fists in its other palm. Great, Haunter. Let's do it. Ash yelled as he pointed his finger forward. Haunter flew onto the battlefield and for once, gave a serious expression at the Mr. Mime in front of it. If Ash said to take this trainer seriously, then it would do so. Despite its playful and joking nature, it could cast all that away when the situation really called for it. A Haunter. So you have captured a ghost Pokemon, Sabrina stated. You bet, and we are going to win this time. Ash shouted. Ready when are, Sabrina. Here it goes. He wasn't going to lose this time. He could do this. The battle will now begin, Sabrina muttered. All right, Haunter, let's start things off with your Shadow Ball. Ash yelled. The ghost Pokemon formed a black orb in its hands before firing it towards the Mime Pokemon, but it simply stood there like it was going to take the attack. Light screen, Sabrina mumbled. Mr. Mime held its hands out, and what looked like a glowing glass wall appeared in front of it. The shadow ball made contact with the wall where it was immediately absorbed. Mr. Mime groaned slightly from the impact, but other than that looked relatively unharmed. So special attacks are no good, eh? Ash asked. That's fine because Haunter has physical attacks, as well. Use Shadow Punch. Haunter threw its hands in the ground to prepare for the never miss attack, but like before, Mr. Mime stood calmly as it seemed to await the attack. Use Reflect, Sabina muttered. Mr. Mime held its hands out once again before the Shadow Punch could hit its mark. A wall once again formed around Mr. Mime. The purple fist erupted from the ground but instead collided with the wall where it bounced off. Mr. Mime still had a light jarring effect because the attack never missed, but received very little damage from it. Mr. Mime has set up both of those walls. Now what am I supposed to do? Ash thought. Before he could think of a strategy, Serena ordered her attack. Psychic, Mr. Mime, she uttered. Mr. Mime leaped into the air and threw its hands out once more before emitting psychic waves that shot towards Haunter. Quick, Haunter! Dodge it! Ash yelled. The ghost Pokemon quickly turned invisible as the attack passed by where it once was. It then quickly reappeared on the other side of Mr. Mime but was surprised to see another psychic attack heading for it. The psychic waves collided with the ghost Pokemon as it was thrown backwards. It was still able to hover in the air, but the attack still clearly hurt a lot. Serena and Mr. Mime must have used their psychic abilities to pinpoint where Haunter would end up. That alone gave them a huge advantage. There was nowhere for Haunter to hide. You need to be careful, Ash, Brock warned. Even though Haunter is a ghost type, it is also part poison type. Psychic attacks are super effective against it. Right. I know, Ash replied. He realized sending out Haunter against Serena's psychic Pokemon would be a mixed bag. He knew Haunter would be weak to psychic attacks but also knew her Pokemon would be weak to its attacks, as well. He figured that would have been the only way to handle Serena, but that was just made super hard because of the reflect and light screen Mr. Mime has set up. Use Confusion, Mr. Mime, Serena ordered next. Mr. Mime's eyes glowed blue as it tried to take control of Haunter, but the ghost Pokemon wouldn't allow it. It quickly disappeared to escape Mr. Mime's psychic grasp and reappeared on the other side of the battlefield. Once it appeared, the ghost Pokemon saw a Psybeam coming towards it and quickly had to disappear again to avoid it. That must be Serena's strategy, Ash muttered. She's making Haunter disappear and using an attack to throw at it before it can collect itself after reappearing. I have to counter that and then attack. Mr. Mime once more tried a confusion attack, but Haunter quickly disappeared again even though it knew an attack was coming as soon as it appeared again. As expected, a Psybeam was heading straight for it after it materialized, but Ash was ready. Counter it with Shadow Ball. He yelled. Haunter summoned the black, glowing orb as fast as it could and shot it forward before the Psybeam could hit. The two attacks connected and caused an explosion in midair, and it was at that moment Ash figured out an attack he could use against Mr. Mime. It was a move that wasn't affected by any type of barrier. Follow with Nightshade. Ash yelled. Haunter shot a stream of black energy at Mr. Mime through the smoke from the explosion, taking it by surprise. The Nightshade passed through the reflect and light screen before striking Mr. Mime right in the chest, causing it to stumble backwards. Go after Mr. Mime while it is stunned, Haunter! Ash yelled. Haunter flew after Mr. Mime as fast as it could before the imitation Pokemon could recover. It then grabbed onto Mr. Mime and did its trademark smirk. Knowing that physical and special moves weren't going to have much effect, Ash changed his strategy. Use Confuse Ray, Haunter! Haunter's eyes began to glow as bright light flashed over Mr. Mime, causing it to shield its eyes from the brightness. Haunter then flew away to see the effects. As expected, Mr. Mime was now stumbling around the battlefield with a dazed look on its face now that it was confused. "Great job, Haunter!" Ash cheered. "That should give us a great advantage." Pikachu added. "Fools," Sabrina uttered as her eyes glowed blue once again. Once she did so, Mr. Mime's eyes glowed blue, as well, and then the Pokémon shook itself and returned to normal. Sabrina had actually cured Mr. Mime's confused state with her psychic powers. Was that even legal? Ash gritted his teeth at the situation. It seemed even confusion wasn't going to work in his battle with Sabrina. He knew he couldn't win by only using Nightshade. There had to be something else he could do. Before he could think of anything, Mr. Mime had launched another psychic attack at Haunter. As Ash saw the waves come closer to Haunter, he quickly thought of something that Haunter may have that could combat those psychic waves. It was different, but it might work. "Use hypnosis!" Ash yelled. Haunter nodded and unleashed sleep-inducing waves at the Mime Pokémon. The two attacks met in midair and began to compete for dominance. It was Mr. Mime's Psychic vs. Haunter's Hypnosis. It was two different forms of psychic waves struggling to overtake the other. After competing for a while, Mr. Mime's Psychic was starting to push the Hypnosis backwards. Ash knew that if Haunter took another strong psychic attack, it might not make it. "Use Nightshade," he called to quickly counter it. Haunter quit emitting the psychic waves and quickly used Nightshade. The two attacks met each other and ended in a draw. "Now use Hypnosis," Ash yelled. Because Haunter was faster, it was able to shoot out the hypnotic waves faster than Mr. Mime was able to use another attack. They passed over the imitation Pokémon as it began to feel droopy. Haunter floated closer to the Mr. Mime to get its sleep-inducing waves to work faster. Finally, Mr. Mime was unable to stay awake any longer and fell asleep. Ash knew he had to act fast because he had no doubt Sabrina would try to wake Mr. Mime up from its sleep very soon. "Haunter, use Nightmare," he called. Haunter's eyes glowed once again as what looked like a black wave emitted from it and passed over the Mr. Mime. The Mr. Mime began to have a troubled and pained look on its face while it was sleeping, and Ash knew it must be taking plenty of damage. "Finish with Dream Eater," Ash yelled. Once again, Haunter held out its hands and what looked like a black light came from its mouth and passed over the Mr. Mime. Haunter then drew its breath in and sucked the light back in, and when it was completed, Mr. Mime was laying down on the gym floor. Instead of it being asleep, however, it was knocked out. "Excellent, Haunter!" Ash cried. He had actually just won his first match up against Sabrina. Haunter's ghost typing really did help out, after all. "Way to go, Ash!" Serena cheered. "Cubone!" the lonely Pokémon added. They knew it was too early to celebrate right now, however. Sabrina had declared a 2-on-2 battle. Despite one of her Pokémon knocked out, the group noticed she had the same stoic expression on her face as she wordlessly returned Mr. Mime. There was still one Pokémon of hers left, and the group had a pretty good idea of what it was. "Are you still up to battle, Haunter?" Ash called to it. "Haunt." The Pokémon responded in the affirmative. "All right then. Let's," Ash began, but was stopped when he felt a tugging on his pants leg. He looked down to see it was Pikachu doing it. The yellow rodent shook its head before leaping next to Haunter and sparking its cheeks. "Pikachu, you want to battle? Even though it might be Kadabra?" Ash asked, suddenly a little worried. "Pie." Pikachu responded. It wasn't going to lose this time. "Is that okay with you, Haunter?" Ash asked the ghost Pokémon. "Haunt haunt haunt." It laughed in response before giving a thumbs up to Pikachu and floating back to where Ash and the rest of the group was. "Come out, Kadabra," Sabrina mumbled as she brought out another Pokeball. It then levitated off of her hands and revealed the inevitable Psy Pokemon. Ash and Pikachu both clenched their teeth when they saw Kadabra appear. It loomed over Pikachu in an almost menacing way as if it was ready to totally wipe out Pikachu again. They were determined not to let it be a repeat of last time. The Kadabra would fall. "We knew Sabrina was going to use Kadabra, Pikachu. Are you up to challenge it?" Ash asked, even though he already knew the answer from its previous statement. "Chew." Pikachu nodded and sparked its cheeks. It was going to show this Kadabra what's what. "All right. Let's do it, Pikachu. Let's show Sabina just how much stronger we've gotten," Ash yelled. "The battle will begin now," Sabrina muttered. "Let's get the jump on Kadabra by using agility, Pikachu." Ash began. "Pika!" the yellow rodent cried as it tore across the floor. It was going to show this Kadabra how much better it was this time. Kadabra was watching Pikachu zoom around the room. Pikachu was definitely a lot faster than it was the last time the two had faced each other. Well, it could fix that. Sabrina's eyes glowed blue once again as she began to issue commands to Kadabra through her mind. That put Ash at a serious disadvantage this time. Ash saw Kadabra's eyes glow blue as well and thought it was going to do a confusion attack, but there was a different shade of blue this time. Ash had made sure to read up on all of Kadabra's attacks before he came here and studied the warning signs. It looked like Disable. "Pikachu, Kadabra's about to use Disable. I know it's important to know where Kadabra is at all times, but you can't look at it," Ash warned. Pikachu reluctantly tore its eyes away from Kadabra so it wouldn't be affected by the Disable. It then began to blindly run around the room in hopes it could find some opening to attack, but Sabrina and Kadabra had other plans. Kadabra instantly vanished from where it was and couldn't be seen anymore. It had used teleport. "Be careful, Pikachu. Kadabra just teleported. It could come out anywhere," Ash called. Pikachu nodded as it continued to run but was surprised when Kadabra reappeared right in front it, but the yellow rodent narrowed its eyes and wouldn't run away this time. That was probably exactly what Kadabra wanted so it could get Pikachu in its psychic control again. Ash must have been thinking the same thing. "They will show it. Use quick attack, Pikachu," Ash yelled. Pikachu increased its forward to speed to its max before jumping into the air and slamming into Kadabra's midsection. It completely took the Psy Pokemon by surprise as it stumbled backwards a few steps. It was expecting Pikachu to run away, but the rodent boldly leaped right into danger and made contact. As soon as Pikachu landed, it darted away, and Kadabra teleported once again. So Pikachu liked to attack directly now, did it? Pikachu continued to dash around the room, looking for any sign of Kadabra. Suddenly, the psychic Pokemon appeared in front of Pikachu again. It had an intimidating look on its face that seemed to be daring Pikachu to try quick attack again. Pikachu wouldn't be scared of it so easily, though. "Use quick attack again, Pikachu," Ash yelled. As soon as Pikachu picked up speed, Kadabra held out its hands, and its eyes glowed blue again. Pikachu was stopped dead in its tracks and appeared to be immobile. Kadabra had successfully used Disable since Pikachu had been looking at it. The rodent would have been trapped whether it ran away or not. Psychic waves then shot out of Kadabra's hands and struck Pikachu, knocking it backwards several yards where it landed on the ground in pain. Now that it was weakened, Sabrina and Kadabra took this opportunity for a confusion attack. Its eyes glowed blue and Pikachu was lifted off of the ground. The yellow rodent instantly got a panicked expression on its face once it saw Kadabra was controlling it again. "No, Pikachu! Ash cried. He couldn't let this happen. He was determined to not let it be a repeat of last time. Just like before, Kadabra began to contort Pikachu's body into many kinds of awkward positions, causing it to yell in pain each time. Pikachu could swear it was having one of its muscles pulled each time Kadabra did that. It hurt so badly. No, not again. Ash thought desperately. This couldn't be happening. Was it really right to use Pikachu again? Once Kadabra was done twisting Pikachu's body, it pointed its index finger at the ceiling. The rodent went flying up where its back slammed into it, causing it to scream in pain. It was then dropped to the floor where it screamed again. Ash's teeth clenched as tears came to his eyes. He couldn't believe this. His best buddy was getting tortured again by the same Pokemon, and it was his fault. He was so sure they were strong enough to take on Serena again. Should he call off the match before something bad happened like last time? It would be the smart thing to do. Serena's father was counting on him to save Serena from herself, and he knew she wouldn't be willing to listen unless he actually won. Ash, I hate to say it, but Brock trailed. He didn't have to finish as Ash knew what he meant. Ash wished there was a way he could fight with Pikachu as one. If they were to fight together, they would be an unstoppable team. If only for a moment, he desired to be linked with Pikachu, however briefly. He wanted to feel the power of Pikachu's attacks. He wanted to be linked to Pikachu like Serena was to Kadabra. They were a team and needed to act like it. Pikachu! Ash screamed. As soon as he screamed that, a jolt seemed to pass through him. He suddenly heard Pikachu's voice inside of his head this time rather than through the outside. It was so strange. Ash quickly became alert when he realized his aura had awoken again. Young man, you have something that can combat Serena's psychic powers, the man said. What is it? Ash asked curiously. That is not for me to tell you. You will learn of it in due time, Serena's father responded. Ash, you have the gift of aura, Riley stated. What? The group exclaimed, completely surprised by the statement. Your aura powers haven't completely awoken yet as you are not ready to learn. However, when you need them most, you will find they will help you out, Riley told Ash. Now must have been one of those times. He desired to fight with Pikachu and be connected as one mind and was granted it. Pikachu still had a pained look on its face as it was thrown around the room, but once Ash looked at it, Pikachu looked straight into Ash's eyes and nodded its head. It felt the connection also, and they were going to make use of it. He didn't even notice that he and Pikachu were glowing blue. There were apparently different ways to use aura as he couldn't hear Pikachu's voice like last time, but they still felt as one. Serena, Brock, Misty, Cubone, and even Haunter let out surprised gasps as they saw what was happening. Is that what I think it is? Misty asked in awe. It is, Serena confirmed. Ash has connected with his aura again. Boon, Cubone muttered. It had never seen this before like the others. So this is what aura was when its surrogate parents discussed it that time. Once Ash linked with Pikachu through aura, the Pokemon began struggling extremely hard against Kadabra's psychic control. Serena and Kadabra, upon realizing this, began to concentrate harder to keep Pikachu in check, but they were slowly losing their control. It soon became a battle of wills as it was Ash and Pikachu's aura versus Serena and her Kadabra's psychic powers. Pikachu was slowly beginning to get control over its own body. Once again as Kadabra had to quit throwing Pikachu around just to maintain focus. Come on, Pikachu. Ash thought. When you and I work together, there is nothing we can't do. He knew Pikachu could hear his thoughts as the rodent nodded its head and seemed to fight even harder. The blue psychic energy around Pikachu began to flicker in and out as it struggled to gain control over its body again. It was so much harder than when Kadabra was an Abra like last time. In an effort to push even harder, Ash and Pikachu yelled as loud as they could in their heads, and the blue energy that was surrounding Pikachu burst apart, completely shattering Kadabra's hold on Pikachu. Unlike last time though, Ash's connection with Pikachu didn't go away. It stayed. That was awesome, Pikachu! Ash yelled to the rodent. Pika-Pie! It responded as it gave a thumbs up back to Ash. The rest of the group continued to watch in amazement. That was definitely some bond those two had if they were able to fight against Sabrina's psychic energy like that. They might be able to win after all. Hey, Pikachu, Ash spoke through his mind. What do you say we win this one together? Pikachu. The rodent responded with a nod. Even though he couldn't hear Pikachu's voice this time in his head, he could now fight just like Sabrina. He could issue attacks through his aura like she could through her psychic powers. The battleground was completely even now. Ash had stood up to Sabrina's psychic powers, and Pikachu had stood up to Kadabra. Ash and Pikachu weren't ever going to fall victim to those powers ever again. Despite the complete amazement of the situation, Sabrina still maintained her emotionless expression and looked as bored as ever. She really was incapable of showing her feelings. Her eyes simply glowed blue again as she ordered a psychic attack from Kadabra. The psychic waves were again shot towards Pikachu, but they were ready this time. Leap out of the way, Pikachu! Ash thought. The group watched with interest as Pikachu flawlessly dodged the attack, and they hadn't even heard a command from Ash. He really was fighting as one with Pikachu by using aura. Pikachu was now off to the side of Kadabra as it turned and prepared to use the psychic attack once more, but Pikachu leaped out of the way again. It was dodging Kadabra's attacks perfectly. That's when the Psy Pokemon disappeared once more. It was teleporting again. Okay, Pikachu. We've got the advantage of aura on our side right now. We just need to try to sense where Kadabra is going to end up. As soon as it appears, give the biggest iron tail you can do, Ash thought to it. Pikachu nodded as it closed its eyes and concentrated. It had a feeling that Kadabra was going to appear somewhere close by as it normally did to gain an advantage, but it would be in for a rude awakening. Pikachu felt a whoosh immediately to its left and charged up Iron Tail out of instinct. Kadabra soon appeared where Pikachu sensed it would, and the yellow rodent dove towards it before Kadabra could even collect itself. Pikachu swung the Iron Tail around with all of its might. It crashed right into Kadabra's midsection, sending it flying backwards into the gym wall. What a shot! That was great, Pikachu! Ash mentally yelled, even though he knew it was too early to celebrate yet. Use Thunderbolt! Pikachu! Pikachu shouted as the massive electrical attack flew from its cheeks. The electricity traveled towards Kadabra, but the Psy Pokemon held out its hands and actually dissipated the attack in thin air. It didn't try to take control of it as usual. It seemed it had learned its lesson when it tried that as an Abra. No good. It looks like we will have to stick to physical attacks, Ash told it, to which Pikachu agreed. It was a strange sight for the others as they watched the battle. To any normal person, it looked as though the Pokemon were battling on their own while the trainers merely watched from the side. However, they knew that there was furious battle going inside both of the trainers' heads right now. Sabrina mentally ordered Kadabra to use Psybeam. While the Pokemon began charging up for the attack, Ash ordered his Pikachu to counter the psychic attack with Thunderbolt. Both Pokemon unleashed their respective attacks, which collided in midair and caused an explosion. Smoke filled the middle of the gym, and that's exactly what Ash wanted. Go after it, Pikachu. Use agility. Ash yelled as the rodent tore across the floor at breakneck speed and leaped into the smoke now that Disable had worn off to ban it from using agility. Though Ash couldn't physically see Pikachu, he could sense where it was by using his aura. He could sense where Kadabra was, too, and was telling Pikachu where to go through his mind. It was then he sensed an attack had just come from Kadabra. "Heads up, Pikachu," he warned. About a half a second later, a blast of psychic waves burst into the smoke where Pikachu was running. The rodent leaped out of the way just in time, but the attack still grazed on the side. Pikachu grit its teeth at the pain but was happy the majority of the attack missed. "Use quick attack," Ash thought. Pikachu shot forward out of the smoke, and to its fortune, Kadabra was just outside the cloud. It didn't have time to dodge or teleport as the yellow rodent rammed into it once more, causing it to stumble backwards in pain. It then did something Ash or Pikachu wasn't expecting. Before Pikachu get away, Kadabra grabbed a hold of Pikachu and curled its fingers around its neck. Pikachu gasped in pain as the Kadabra began to literally choke poor Pikachu. It then emitted a psychic attack while it was holding onto Pikachu. Now the rodent was feeling double the pain. Kadabra not only had a strong hold on Pikachu's neck, it now had to withstand psychic. This must have been what Sabrina wanted, Brock realized. She knew Ash wasn't going to use special attacks anymore, so she lured him in with physical attacks and made her move when he and Pikachu got comfortable. "We aren't giving up yet," Ash yelled. "Our will to win is much stronger than Sabrina's could ever be. I'm not giving up until the end this time." He then added in his mind, "You can do it, Pikachu." Pikachu struggled immensely as it was suffering incredible damage from Kadabra at the moment. It then felt strange, like it was receiving a power boost from Ash. It felt incredible. Pikachu began struggling once more against Kadabra as a blue light surrounded Pikachu again, taking the Psy Pokémon by surprise. It then intensified the strength of its psychic attack in an effort to knock Pikachu out faster, but Ash and Pikachu would have none of it. Pikachu then closed its eyes momentarily, and when it opened them, they were a dark blue instead of black. "Do it, Pikachu!" "Thunder!" Ash mentally yelled. Pikachu charged up despite Kadabra's grip around its neck and unleashed the biggest electrical attack anyone in the room had ever seen, and it was actually glowing blue. Not only had Pikachu just learned its most powerful electrical attack, it was powered by Ash's aura. Wow! Pikachu just learned Thunder. What an attack! Serena muttered in awe as she watched the enormous electricity destroy what was around it. Kadabra, meanwhile, had the shock of its life as the electricity engulfed its entire body, making it immediately release its hold on Pikachu. The rodent fell to the floor as Kadabra continued to cry out in pain from the supercharged thunder. Once the attack ended, Kadabra was charred completely black as it twitched from the bits of electricity still in its body. Its eyes were replaced by swirls, but Ash and Pikachu knew that didn't mean anything. They needed to end this before it could use recover like last time. "Give it an iron tail with everything you've got," Ash commanded. Pikachu nodded its head and leapt high into the air as it charged up its most powerful iron tail yet. It then fell towards the ground and began somersaulting through the air to pick up momentum. Pretty soon, it was going so fast it looked like a spinball shooting towards its target. Pikachu extended its tail and smacked Kadabra as hard as it could, but it wasn't done. Because it was spinning so fast, Pikachu had the momentum to twirl around and hit Kadabra with another iron tail, and another, and another. Finally, Pikachu gave one last hard slap of its tail of iron, and Kadabra was immediately blown off its feet and crashed into gym wall, actually creating a crater inside of it. Bits of plaster flew from the wall and created a cloud of dust from the impact. Pikachu landed on its feet and stared at the cloud in determination, the rest of the group doing the same. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the dust cloud parted. Everyone was shocked to see that Kadabra was revealed to be deeply embedded into the wall due to how fast the Pokemon struck it. It would be impossible to pry it out unless returned to its Pokeball, but it didn't matter anyway even if it could get free from the wall. Kadabra wasn't moving and was clearly knocked out for good this time. They did it. They really did it this time. Serena had been defeated in a 2-on-2 match. There was only one thing that Ash was feeling right now, pure joy. Yeah! Ash cried in sheer delight as he pumped his fist upward and leaped into the air as high as he could. They really did. Amazing, Misty muttered with wide eyes. That was really well done, Brock muttered in equal awe. Serena felt tears of joy come to her eyes as she saw Ash's victory. He had actually defeated Serena this time. He had been able to tap into his aura, even though it was unintentional, and use it to combat Serena's psychic powers. Ash truly was the most amazing person she had ever met in her life. As much as she wanted to give him the biggest hug of her life right now, she knew to let Ash see his Pokemon first. Pikachu! Ash exclaimed as he ran towards his partner, it doing the same. They continued running towards each other until they finally reached their target. Pikachu leaped into Ash's arms, and they hugged each other as tight as they could. While he was embracing Pikachu, Ash felt the aura and his connection with Pikachu fade away completely. It seemed he still couldn't control when his aura could come and go yet. Even so, he was really happy it came along when it did. Riley promised to teach him one day, so until then, Ash was completely content with what he could do right now. Pretty soon, Haunter joined the two as it laughed merrily that its trainer won a victory. It had heard that this was an extremely important match for Ash and really wanted to help win it for him. It was glad it had helped out. Ash vaguely saw Serena return Kadabra out of the corner of his eyes as she began to walk, and not float, towards him. Once she reached him, Ash stopped embracing Haunter and Pikachu and stared up at her with a questioning look. Serena continued to stare back with a stony expression until she finally held out a circular yellow badge for Ash to take. In her outstretched palm. Your badge, she mumbled. Oh, thank you, Serena, Ash replied as he took the badge. He then stared as the badge twinkled back at him before grinning broadly once again. Take a look guys. The Marsh badge. Pi Pikachu. Pikachu cheered. Haunt haunt. The ghost Pokemon added happily. As Ash looked back up at Serena, he realized something. Serena was acting no different than she usually was. Despite him winning, Serena still had the same emotionless expression she always wore. He was supposed to save her from herself. He promised her father. Despite winning the Marsh badge, Ash still felt a small defeat in some way. As Ash stared into Serena's cold, emotionless gaze, he felt great pity for her. She seemed so unhappy on the inside. It truly was a sad story. Brock, Misty, Serena, and Cubone must have realized what Ash was thinking, as their overjoyed expression soon turned to sadness. They made their way over towards Ash and put their hands on his shoulders for support. They had wanted to save Serena, too, but it looked like that wouldn't be possible now. Haunter, meanwhile, saw Serena's stoic expression and decided she could use some cheering up. It floated over until it was just in front of her face and began making goofy faces at her. Serena, however, appeared completely unaffected and just stared back at Haunter with an ice-cold gaze. The battle is over, Serena deadpanned. It isn't battling. It is just playing around, so what's the harm in that? A new voice asked. The group turned and let out a gasp of shock as they saw Serena's father standing right next to them. When did he appear? "You've returned," Sabrina muttered to her father, but said nothing else. However, before Sabrina's father could answer, Haunter once again appeared in front of Sabrina and did several funny tricks. Despite Haunter's best attempts, Sabrina still showed no sign of any emotion. Seeing how none of its jokes were working, Haunter tried its ace in the hole. It pulled out a small bomb. The group let out a gasp and hit the floor with their hands over their heads as the fuse continued to get shorter and shorter. Sabrina showed the first almost sign of emotion when she opened her mouth slightly while Haunter continued smile in a goofy manner. "Haunter, wait!" Ash cried, but it was too late. The bomb exploded, sending bits of debris everywhere. The group and Sabrina's father were pelted by small bits of rubble, and they quickly looked up to see the damage done. They saw Haunter and Sabrina almost completely covered in black soot. They were completely messy. Despite this, Sabrina still had her mouth open in slight shock at what had just happened. The group's sweat dropped as they now feared for their lives. They thought Sabrina was going to go on a psychic rampage and kill everyone in sight, but to their great surprise, she did just the opposite. Slowly, but surely, Sabrina's mouth curled upward from a frown to smile. "Oh, my!" she smiled. Her father gasped in surprise. It didn't stop there, however. Sabrina's smile soon got so wide that she couldn't contain herself anymore. She began to giggle. Louder and louder her giggle got until it evolved into full, mirthful laughter. Haunter, upon seeing Sabrina start laughing, immediately smiled its biggest yet and began joining her in the laughter. "Sabrina's actually laughing," Ash commented as he and the rest stared with a dumbfounded expression. "Ever since she started training her psychic powers, I've never seen Sabrina laugh like this," Sabrina's father said as tears began to stream from his eyes. "She's remembered how to smile. I've never seen her so happy in my entire life." The group continued to stare at Sabrina and Haunter as they continued to laugh together. It was true, there was no sign of any cold, emotionless girl that was left in Sabrina. All there seemed to be was a joyful, laughing girl. It was truly a sight to see. "I'm so glad you came back, young man," her father continued as he clapped a hand on Ash's back. "You and your Haunter have helped Sabrina rediscover her heart. You've helped her learn how to smile again." It was then Sabrina's father decided to try something risky. He took a few slow steps towards the laughing teenager and stopped in front of her. Sabrina finally stopped laughing and stared up at her father in wonder. "Sabrina, I love you. Will you please allow us to become a family once again? Can we continue where we left off?" he asked as he continued to sniff from his earlier crying. At first, Sabrina said nothing. She continued to stare at her father in wonder until she finally spoke. "Daddy," she said, her voice no longer emotionless, as her eyes welled up with tears, "too. I love you, too. Please don't ever let me go down that path again." Sabrina's father took shaky breaths once he heard Sabrina say those words. He then did something he thought he might never be able to do again. He took a few more steps forward and wrapped Sabrina in a warm, fatherly embrace. Words couldn't begin to describe what the man was feeling as he felt his daughter's love again. "Oh, Sabrina. You have no idea how happy I am to finally hear you say those words. I can't wait to tell your mother," he exclaimed as he began to cry openly. Sabrina returned the hug and began doing the same. The group even began to feel tears come to their eyes, as well, at the heartwarming reunion between father and daughter, even Haunter. Ash turned to Haunter and gave it a thumbs up. "Well done, Haunter. You sure are a special Pokemon," he told it. "Yes. Thank you so much," Sabrina's father added as he continued to embrace his daughter. "Haunter," the Pokemon replied as it rubbed the back of its head in embarrassment. That's just the kind of Pokemon it was. It loved to bring happiness to other people's life. The group continued to watch the scene with happiness. They had really did, after all. Serena was saved. It looked like she really rediscovered herself and didn't have to worry about losing her emotions anymore due to the love of her mother and father. Serena was again the happy, lovable girl she was before. It truly was a joyous moment, and they couldn't be happier for them at the moment. The group was now exiting the Saffron City gym, and Serena, along with her father and mother, were seeing them off. Their adventure in Saffron City had finally come to a close. Despite dreading to come back here, now that the group had helped the family, it was a little sad that they had to leave now. "Thank you for everything, Ash," Serena's father said as he shook the boy's hand. "You have done so much. I was right to believe in your strengths as a trainer. I have no doubt in my mind that you will do great things as you go on your journey. Our family wishes you the best of luck." "You're welcome, sir," Ash smiled as he returned the handshake. "If you ever need help with something, please don't hesitate to ask," Serena told them. "Thanks. We will," Ash replied. Who would have thought Serena would offer to help somebody after what they had seen so far? The group then turned to leave as Serena's family waved goodbye. It was so heartwarming to see a family reunited like that. It was almost like when Cubone had been briefly reunited with its mother. "Have a safe journey," Serena's father yelled one last time before waving to the group again as they rounded a corner. Once the family was out of sight, they let out a happy sigh. Ash took out the marsh badge and held it in front of him. He then proudly pinned it to the inside of his jacket and stared at his collection of 7 badges. He only had one more to obtain. It was the Earth badge. "I'm so glad for you, Ash," Serena told him. "You only have one more badge to obtain before you enter the Pokemon League. How do you feel?" "I feel like I can really do this," Ash replied as he gave her a smile. "I don't care who the gym leader is of Viridian City is. I'm going to win that badge and enter the Pokemon League." "Hey, Ash. I just remembered," Serena spoke up. "We're supposed to meet Gary and Leaf in Pallet Town before we head to Viridian City again." "That's right," Brock agreed. "It looks like we will have to take a blimp back to Cinnabar Island before we can catch a ship that will take us near Pallet Town. I guess we will be taking a slight detour back to Cinnabar Island," Misty chuckled nervously. "Blaine has been really nice to us, and I would hate to impose on him again." "We'll just have to make sure to pay him this time," Ash replied. "So when does the next blimp to Cinnabar Island leave?" Before anyone could answer, they saw black dots speeding through the skies of Saffron City. Once they reached where the group was standing, they stopped before making a beeline straight for them. As the group watched in confusion, the black dots were becoming bigger until the group could make out 3 Pokemon coming towards them. The group squinted and could see a person perched on each of the Pokemon. They could see the Pokemon in question were 2 Pidgeot, and a Wigglytuff. It was clear the group was the intended targets. The 3 Pokemon looked familiar to the group for some reason, especially to Ash and Serena. "What's going on?" Ash wondered aloud as they got closer. As the Pokemon became clearer in view, the group could make out the people who were riding them. Yellow and Blue were on their Pidgeot, and Rose was on the Wigglytuff. Serena's mom, Grace, was riding with Rose. The Pokemon soon landed in front of the group as the 4 people got of their respective Pokemon with looks of urgency on their faces. The group knew something had to be wrong for the adults to come find them like this. This was really odd. "It's Blue Oak, the champion of Kanto," a nearby man cried as he and few more people went to crowd around the famous oak. Blue immediately gave the citizens of Saffron City an ice-cold glare to let them know he was not here for autographs. Getting the gist of the intense look, the citizens left him alone and continued what they were doing. Gary's father was pretty frightening when angry. What are you all doing here? Ash asked in complete confusion. He wasn't trying to sound rude, but this was a huge surprise. It was then the group noticed that Yellow and Grace had tears streaming down their faces while Blue and Rose's faces were as hard as stone. Something bad clearly had happened. It was then Ash noticed his mom wasn't among the group. A growing sense of dread was building inside of him. Ash, Rose said slowly as she went over and placed her hands on Ash's shoulders. We need you to hurry up and come with us, the others, too. We need to get back to Pallet Town. As quickly as possible. Why? What's going on? Where's Mom? Ash stuttered. Brock, Misty, and Serena were getting alarmed, too. What had happened? For the love of God, please at least let him know his mom's okay. No, Ash couldn't think like that. His mother was fine. She was in Pallet Town, safe and sound. Riley was there and protecting her just like he was supposed to, right? Right? As much as the group wanted to believe it, the adults' gazes were fixed solely on Ash. It definitely involved him. Blue gave a huge sigh. I'm sorry. Team Rocket has Delia, Ash. Riley's in the Viridian Hospital. We need to leave now. Where are you taking me? Delia choked as she was dragged along. Proton had his arm around her throat and was pulling her very violently through a long hallway. 2. Rocket grunts were on either side of them. I thought I told you to shut up. Proton growled. You don't want to make me angry. I'm known as the scariest and cruelest of the Rockets. Delia then stayed quiet as tears came to her eyes. Unable to stay completely silent due to the overwhelming emotions she was feeling, she had to resort to shaky breaths. She couldn't believe this was happening. She was so scared for her son right now. How could her baby boy have gotten mixed up with a criminal organization like this? She didn't care what happened to her, but what would become of Ash? They finally reached the edge of the long hallway, and Proton knocked on the door. Sir, we brought Delia Ketchum. Good. Send her in, a dark voice said from the other side. Proton opened the door and entered a large room that was presumably their boss's main room. It had a large bookcase crammed with several files, some even in a language Delia had never seen before. There were 2 chairs that were in front of a very huge desk with several more papers on it. A large chair was facing away from the Rockets and Delia as they entered. Delia noticed there was a man with short green hair standing next to the chair. A Persian was on the other side. Delia was thrust roughly in the chair by Proton as he stood at attention and awaited orders. Thank you, Proton, a dark voice said from behind the chair, sounding oddly familiar to Delia. You, Archer, and the others may go. I wish to speak to Delia alone. Sir. Proton replied as he and the other Rockets saluted before filing out the door and closing it behind them. What? How does this person know my name? Why did Team Rocket take me to see their leader? Delia wondered in worry. Delia, the voice spoke, causing her attention to snap back to the turned chair. It's been a while. I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are or what you're talking about, Delia cried. You don't? Then let me refresh your memory, the man began. You may have run away from me with your son before, and I let you go. A man forming a criminal organization at the time had too many things to take care of. That was over 20 years ago. You may also recall a certain meeting 12 years ago. Delia's eyes widened in horror as realization came to her face. The leader of Team Rocket couldn't possibly be him, could it? For years, I simply didn't pay you any attention after you left, except when I was searching for our son, Silver. I had bigger and better things to take care of, but that was until your other son, Ash, came along, the dark voice continued. Delia was completely flabbergasted about how this could even be possible. Ash truly had been in Team Rocket's way. Now they were out for revenge and targeted her. "Your son has been such a thorn in my side," the dark voice said. "It makes me sick to even look at him. He reminds me too much of what I lost, but not anymore. It's time to give to him what's been coming ever since he first defied us. Please, do with me what you want. Just don't hurt Ash," Delia pleaded as tears threatened to fall from her eyes. "I don't really think you are in a position to bargain with me right now, Delia," the voice replied menacingly. The chair slowly began to spin around as Delia's eyes grew wider than what they already were. The chair continued to turn until it was fully facing Delia, and she had to cover her mouth to keep from crying out in utter shock when she saw who was in chair. She couldn't believe it. He was the leader of Team Rocket. Despite being much older, he was still very recognizable. The man had a very sinister smile on his face when he saw Delia's reaction. "Hello, Delia," Giovanni greeted. "How has my old sweetheart been?" Giovanni." Delia gasped. Interlude, Mutuo awakens. Where am I? This was the question in the mind of a creature as it floated. Everything that has happened to it felt like a dream so far. Were they even memories? Did they really happen? Everything was so confusing. It felt as though it were actually awake for the first time, but that couldn't be right, could it? This wasn't an ordinary creature, however. It wasn't born of an egg like the other Pokémon of the universe. No, it didn't receive a natural birth. It was cloned. As the Pokémon opened its eyes, it could see it was floating in a liquid of some type. It could see other creatures, humans, it believed they were called, on the other side. They were there, and it was here. Then again, where was here, exactly? One of the scientists happened to look in its direction, and his eyes lit up with excitement. He hurriedly called the other scientists over as they crowded around the tank. The clone Pokémon could hear muffled voices on the other side of the tank, but it couldn't make out what they were saying. It needed to get out of this place, but how? The creature then felt these powers that it had never felt before, despite just awakening. It wanted to break out. It needed to get out of this place and into the outside world. It was then that the glass tube the clone Pokémon was in began to crack. The scientists gave a curious glance as they watched what was taking place. Soon, the glass tube succumbed to the pressure and shattered. Glass and liquid spilled all over the floor. Despite this, the Pokémon or scientists weren't harmed. "It's awoken. It even broke out of the tube," one of the scientists exclaimed. "Quick, one of you go inform Giovanni immediately." "Quiet," another one scolded. "We need to see its great psychic powers firsthand. Do you think it is capable of speech or some form of communication?" The creature gave all of the scientists around it a look of confusion. What was its purpose? Why was it created? It had so many questions, but it decided to ask the first thing that came to its mind. "Where am I?" The creature didn't speak verbally, but all of its thoughts could be heard through its ESP. The scientists beamed upon seeing the clone Pokémon make contact. "You are on a small island far away from the Kanto mainland," one of the scientists, who was presumed to be their lead researcher, answered. "We have been taking care of you for several years now, and you have finally awoken. Today is a very special day, indeed." "Taking care of me? What do you mean?" the creature asked. "As you may have guessed, you weren't given a natural birth. You were actually cloned from another Pokémon. We have been working on several clones throughout the years, but you are the first one who has survived," the head scientist explained. "A clone?" the creature thought. There were others along with it? It was the only one who survived. The Pokémon's eyes then lit up as it remembered its past. It remembered others. There was a blue Pokémon with a shell, a lizard with a flame on its tail, and a dinosaur with a bulb on its back. They were in glass tubes along with it at some point. It never fully awakened inside of the tube, but it was still able to communicate telepathically with the others. They all were wondering the same thing as it was. Then, one day, they were no more. Is that what it was like to die? Why was I the only one to survive? The Pokémon asked the scientist. What made it so special? The cloning process needed a very strong life force to be successful. The other ones we were cloning came from a Bulbasaur, Charmander, and a Squirtle. They simply didn't have enough energy to live. You, on the other hand, were cloned from a very special Pokémon. You came from the legendary Pokémon, Mew. The scientist answered before grinning broadly. We will henceforth call you Mewtwo. Mewtwo looked down at the ground at the scientist's response. Was that really all it was? A clone? It didn't even have its own true name. It was merely named after that which it was cloned from. What was its purpose in life? Surely these humans must have had some answer for it. Now that you have successfully created me, what do you do now? What am I here for? Mewtwo inquired. It needed to know why it was here. I'm afraid this is only the beginning. The scientist replied excitedly. We have many experiments and research projects to do on you. This will be a great breakthrough in technology and learning of the rarest Pokémon in world, Mew. The scientists then began to congratulate each other and began excitedly talking of all of the plans they had for Mewtwo now. This was a glorious day. They really created the world's most powerful Pokémon. Mewtwo, however, wasn't looking as thrilled as the scientists. That's all I am? A test subject? Mewtwo asked. Yes. We have so many things in store for you. The head scientist answered giddily before resuming to talk with the others. Will my purpose be discovered after that? Mewtwo inquired of the scientist. The scientists then began to glance at each other confusedly. This creature was certainly asking a lot of questions for a clone. All it was wondering was what its destiny was. Clones weren't supposed to have such questions. They had no souls, after all. Your purpose is an experiment, nothing more. Now don't ask any more questions. Your masters commanded, the head scientist said firmly. Mewtwo looked back down at the ground. What were these feelings that were going through its mind at the moment? Was it sadness? These humans cared nothing for it. They wouldn't care if it was hurt or spent the rest of its life tested on as long as they finished their experiments. Mewtwo suddenly clenched its three-fingered hands together as its sadness turned to a different feeling. It felt a huge tightness in its chest. Its head felt like it had a lot of pressure building inside of it. Was it anger? This cannot be my destiny, Mewtwo thought. Surely it was created for something much more than just some test subject. If these humans weren't going to help it, it would find out on its own. It wasn't going to bend to these humans' wills. They were not its masters. Mewtwo's eyes took on a dark look as they began to glow blue. It was not created for this. Various other glass tubes around the lab began to smash through Mewtwo's psychic powers. It then focused on the other machines as they began to explode. The scientists' excited expressions soon turned to horror once they saw their creation was turning its back on them. They had to get it under control. They sent various mechanical hands and claws in an attempt to grab and restrain Mewtwo, but Mewtwo wasn't one to be so easily tamed. It focused its psychic powers on the security systems, and they shattered before it, as well. It's no use. We have to get out of here. One of the scientists cried as they made a mad dash for the exit, but found it was blocked by a piece of debris that was on fire. They were trapped. Mutuo, meanwhile, was beginning to grasp the extent of how powerful it really was. It was able to smash anything by simply thinking about it and using its will. These humans tried to get it back under control, but were unable to. Now they were fleeing before it because they were afraid. Mutuo's eyes narrowed at how arrogant these humans were. They thought that just because they created it that they could use it however they please. The first sign it showed rebellion, they turned tail and are trying to flee. It couldn't be used by such cowards. Mutuo then continued to destroy the lab around it. It was unleashing its full fury on the humans who called it nothing more than a science experiment. It would escape and find its true purpose without them. The trapped scientists grew more and more panicked as the lab literally began to crash down around them. Some were even jumping out of a nearby window in desperation. Despite there being nothing but an ocean beside there, they surely plummeted to their deaths upon making such a decision, but there was no other option. They were dead either way. The head scientist was the only one who wasn't frantically running around the building. He sat, leaned against a wall, as he watched in horror yet complete awe, as their creation destroyed everything around it. We aimed to create the world's most powerful Pokemon, he said to himself before closing his eyes in resignation. And we succeeded. There was another explosion, and the head scientist knew no more. The building continued to crumble around the remaining scientists before Mutuo used its psychic powers to blast through what remained of the room. No more than a few seconds after it left that there was another explosion in the building, larger than any before it. That was all that was needed to send the rest of the building to the ground. Mutuo landed on the ground among all of the fire and debris and stood there. It could hear all of the pain screams of any scientist who managed to survive the building's collapse, but Mutuo gave no move to help them. If those scientists cared nothing for it, then it cared nothing for them. It continued to listen to their yells until they began to die down. They became fewer and fewer until they were gone completely. The only sound left was the crackling of the fire around Mutuo. Mutuo looked upward towards the sky as it thought about what it should do next, but it didn't have to as it soon heard another sound. It was a whirring of some sort. Mutuo looked up and saw a flying machine coming towards it. Mutuo originally planned to simply obliterate the machine right there, but its curiosity got the better of it as it continued to watch it become closer and closer until it landed not far in front of it. The door to the helicopter opened, and Mutuo's eyes narrowed once more as it saw a human step out and approach it. What did this human want? Did he come to experiment on it, also? It could sense there a lot of other beings around it. They seemed to hold a lot of malice. What was going on? Leave me, human, Mutuo said. I do not wish to see you. Mutuo was surprised to see the man continue to approach it. What surprised it even more is that the man seemed to bear no hostility or greed in his eyes. He seemed almost sympathetic. What? I am truly sorry for what has happened to you, the man said. It must have been terrible when those fools tried to treat you as nothing but a science project. I, however, do not see you that way. I do not need your sympathy, human, Mutuo spoke. What would you know about me anyway? I know that you have just awakened from a deep sleep, and your powers are unstable. If left to your own devices, you could wind up hurting yourself and not even realize it. I can help you with that, the man answered. Mutuo wasn't so convinced, however. It could feel the malice around it despite the man's expression and seemingly comforting words. It sensed they were other Pokemon. Real Pokemon unlike itself who was just a clone. You come to me in peace, yet have an army of other Pokemon at my back. Mutuo seemed to growl. Do not pay attention to them, the man answered with a wave of his hand in a dismissive manner. They will not harm you as long as I am around. I do not want your help, Mutuo replied. I wish for no more want any dealings with humans. With all due respect, you would be making a big mistake to reject my offer, the man said. I can help you. Allow me to let you be able to focus your power. That way, you can use them to your utmost potential, and together, we can discover your destiny. This actually piqued Mutuo's curiosity. Did the man say that he could discover Mutuo's destiny? How so? Mutuo asked. Since I have gotten your interest, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Giovanni, and I run an organization called Team Rocket, the man introduced. Giovanni, Mutuo echoed thoughtfully. It felt like it had heard that name before while it was still sleeping. As I was saying, I can help you focus your powers so you can be invincible, Giovanni said. Allow me to guide you, and together, we can take over the world and get revenge on the humans who dared to call you nothing more than an experiment. We shall be partners and equals. Mutuo continued to watch the man called Giovanni. He could simply refuse and fly off, or he could just kill the man on the spot. However, what Giovanni said made sense. He seemed nothing like the humans in the laboratory. It seemed like he really wanted help it out. Had it judged all humans too quickly? Maybe it could give this human a chance. Maybe some could be trusted. Show me, Mutuo finally answered. If what this human said was true, it would be able to discover its purpose through him. Good. Follow me, Giovanni responded as he turned to go back to the helicopter. He then gave a hand signal and waved it into the air. The hundreds of ghost Pokemon that were surrounding the two then retreated and disappeared from whence they came now that the threat was over. Unbeknownst to Mutuo, Giovanni wasn't simply offering Mutuo a chance to be his partner. He wasn't lying when he said they would take over the world, but it wouldn't be as equals. Mutuo was simply his tool that he would use for his own purposes. Giovanni believed that abomination of a thing could never be his equal. It was powerful, of course, but still an abomination. With his back turned, Giovanni gave a dark smile. Yes, Mutuo's destiny would be clear to it soon enough. Mutuo was standing in a small room. Around it were several more mechanical hands each holding some type of armor. Was this what the human was talking about when he said he could help Mutuo focus its powers? It was a robotic suit. Giovanni was standing how above Mutuo on a platform with what Mutuo perceived was a friendly smile on his face. Underneath that smile, however, was pure malicious intent. This Pokemon would help Giovanni conquer the world, whether it wanted to or not. The dark man raised his hand, and the various pieces of armor began coming towards Mutuo. Slowly. For a moment, Mutuo contemplated destroying the suit, but it had told itself that it would trust the man. With that in mind, Mutuo allowed the suit to attach to its body. There were many clicking noises as the suit of armor finished attaching. Finally, a form of metallic headgear came and set itself over Mutuo's head. The suit was complete. My powers are being suppressed by this suit? Mutuo questioned. No. They aren't suppressed. They are being focused. With this suit, your purpose will be clear in due time, my friend, Giovanni told it. You said this will allow me to focus my powers? How will I know? Mutuo asked Giovanni. Giovanni smirked in return. If you doubt it, why don't we test it right now? A door then slid open slowly in front of Mutuo to reveal a large room for battling in front of it. Mutuo then stepped out into the room and saw a large rock snake Pokemon in front of it, an onyx. The onyx gave a roar and looked prepared for battle. Mutuo eyed the onyx in front of it. It was a real Pokemon that had been born naturally. Onyx wasn't a clone like it was. Mutuo wanted to ask it what it was like to be a natural Pokemon, but Giovanni soon ordered the onyx to attack. The onyx charged forward and Mutuo's eyes glowed. It doesn't matter what it was like to be a naturally born Pokemon. It isn't like they would understand how it felt anyway. The only ones who could ever understand it were now dead. For now, it just needed to know its purpose. Mewtwo then used its psychic powers to lift Onix off of the ground and throw it quite hard into a nearby wall, creating a crater. The Onix slumped over from the crash and fell defeated. Had it really just been that easy? Mewtwo felt its power was on a whole different level than the Onix in front of it. Were clone Pokemon stronger than real Pokemon? So this is the extent of my power, Mewtwo thought. Mewtwo was so caught up in its thoughts that it didn't notice the evil smile Giovanni had on his face as he watched. Giovanni was now on top of a small cliff with Mewtwo down below. Archer and several rocket grunts were by his side. If he recalled correctly, a stampede of stolen Tauros should be coming through here soon. Mewtwo's psychic powers would bring them into submission and they could capture them. Sir, with all due respect, are you sure it is wise to let Mewtwo roam free like this? Wouldn't it be better in a controlled area where it couldn't escape? Archer asked the rocket. Boss. In case you have forgotten, Archer, we still have the army of ghost Pokemon who are monitoring it at every moment. That naive Pokemon may think we are working as equals. But it is merely just a pawn in a game that it doesn't even understand, Giovanni smirked. Ariana felt it, too, sir. If Mewtwo is left to its own devices and not restrained on a regular basis, we may end up regretting it, the rocket executive warned. Giovanni turned to give his subordinate a dangerous expression. Are you questioning me, Archer? Perhaps you would like to experience Mewtwo's powers firsthand, he growled. Archer immediately paled upon hearing that. He and his Pokemon wouldn't stand a chance against that thing. It would rip them apart. Despite Archer's great fears of Mewtwo turning its back against them, he had a bigger fear of Giovanni's wrath. I apologize, sir. I was way out of line. It will not happen again, Archer replied as he bowed to the dark man. Giovanni turned back around and resumed watching his pawn. The Tauros stampede was approaching fast. As expected, Mewtwo was just standing there. Heh, that Pokemon. Thought that just because it possessed psychic abilities that it was in control. It couldn't be more wrong. Mewtwo, meanwhile, saw the stampede approaching. These creatures didn't even seem to care that they were about to trample it, not that it would let them. Mewtwo's eyes glowed blue again, and the Tauros were lifted up one by one in the air, writhing in pain. Pokeballs soon came through the air and began capturing each of the Tauros. Rocket grunts continued to throw the Pokeballs as Mewtwo continued to restrain them. It wasn't long until the entire herd was captured. No being has been able to stand before me, but still, what is my purpose? Mewtwo wondered aloud once more. Giovanni continued to smile evilly from up above. This Pokemon had just captured and beaten every single Pokemon without breaking a sweat. Those scientists really had created the world's most powerful Pokemon. They may have lost their lives in the process, but Giovanni felt it was a small price to pay for the power he had now been given control of in the form of Mewtwo. He felt it was now time that Mewtwo tried out for a real Pokemon battle. He could hardly wait to see who his first victim would be. A red convertible was speeding towards the Viridian City gym at the moment. It was actually quite crowded for such a small vehicle. It consisted of at least a dozen cheerleaders. One arrogant boy, and a less than thrilled girl who was quite annoyed at being squished between everyone. The reason for the visit to the gym was this certain boy was going to win his final badge, the Earth Badge. Then he would qualify for the Pokemon League. Who was he? Gary Oak. Gary. Did we really have to bring all of these cheerleaders along? Leaf shouted, but her voice was muffled due to being so crammed in the middle of so many cheerleaders. Of course. Who would want to miss the great Gary Oak win his final badge before the Pokemon League? Gary asked arrogantly. He appeared to be the only one in the vehicle who looked comfortable. Why couldn't we have just waited for Ash and Serena to get back to Pallet Town? You two could have challenged the gym together. That was the original plan. Leaf gasped. And let Ashy boy catch up to me? No way. Gary replied. He then added, besides, this is the first time the gym leader has been able to battle in a while. If we wait for Ash, he may be gone again. Leaf rolled her eyes. Gary certainly wasn't as big of a jerk as he used to be, but he still hadn't let go of his arrogance. This cheerleading posse of his certainly never helped matters. Concerning his ego, these cheerleaders have been chanting Gary's name since they left Pallet Town earlier that day. If Leaf would have known the car ride would have been this crammed and loud, she would have just preferred to walk to Viridian City, despite the distance. Gary! Gary! He's the best! The cheerleaders shouted as the car finally came to a stop in front of the gym. The door opened, and one by one, the cheerleaders piled out with Gary and Leaf bringing up the rear. Leaf let in a huge gulp of air at finally being able to breathe properly again, while Gary merely smirked. Ah, don't be that way, Leaf. It was you who wanted to come along with me, Gary told her. I know that. I came because I'm your friend and want to support you for your final battle. I just don't understand why we had to bring them, Leaf said with a frown as she gestured to the cheerleaders. You know that if you weren't such a great trainer, these cheerleaders would have nothing to do with you. Hey, what can I say? I need some girls to cheer me on while I battle. Gary shrugged. Why don't you just have girls that actually care about you to support you on your journey? Leaf mumbled while turning away. I wouldn't care if you were the best trainer or the worst trainer just as long as you were you. This took Gary by surprise as he turned and gave her a curious glance. Wow. Thanks, Leaf. I really do appreciate that, he said sincerely. Leaf turned back around to face Gary and smiled. The truth was that Gary Oak really did appreciate his oldest friends in Pallet Town, even Ash. He would never admit it, but Gary was actually a very lonely boy. His father, Blue, being the champion of Kanto, was hardly ever home. His grandfather, Professor Oak, was always busy at the lab, and his mother died quite a while back. The only family member Gary was close to was his sister, Daisy, but she had started working as an aide to their grandfather within the past year. So Gary hadn't talked to her much, either, lately. He knew every member of his family loved him and would do anything for him, but he still wished he could spend more time with them. He tried to mask his loneliness up so much by acting extremely arrogant and pretending he was better than anyone else to boost his confidence, and of course, the easiest target was Ash Ketchum. Most people mistook his arrogance as pride for being the son of Kanto's champion, but that wasn't the truth. It was all an act, and Leaf was one of the few people who knew that, so she tried not get angry every time Gary was being prideful. She had a pretty good feeling that Gary only allowed these cheerleaders to go with him everywhere to give him a feeling of being wanted. Of course, he would never admit that, either. Just know that Ash, Serena, and me are your friends and like you for yourself. Not because you are famous, Leaf said as she grabbed his hand and gave a reassuring squeeze. Gary really did appreciate Leaf's words. It was a side of him that he didn't show very often. He may not have realized it, but he was a little red in his cheeks. However, the cries of his cheerleaders interrupted the moment. Gary! Gary! He's the man. If he can't do it, no one can. They chanted. Gary pulled his hand out of Leaf's grasp and returned to his usual conceited smirk. Heh, well, I need to hurry up and win that badge. My ladies are waiting for me, he said as he turned towards the gym doors. Leaf frowned before giving the cheerleaders an intense glare. The posse of girls merely shrugged before following Gary to the doors to the gym. Leaf let out a sigh before reluctantly following. Her cheers for Gary would probably be drowned out by the screaming of the other girls, but at least she was here to support him. There were two men in what looked like battle suits guarding the entrance. They looked pretty intimidating considering they each were carrying a spear. This gym leader clearly took security to the max. Why would he need security anyway? None of the other gym leaders were like this. Despite this, Gary approached the guards with utmost confidence. He put his hands on his hips and puffed his chest out to appear bolder. My name is Gary Oak of Pallet Town. I'm the son of the Kanto champion Blue Oak and grandson of Professor Samuel Oak. I have come to request a gym battle for the Earth badge, Gary declared. The two guards nodded once. Very well. You may enter. Will the group behind you be joining you? Yes. They are all with me, Gary replied. Okay. As long as none of them are other challengers, they may enter. It is a strict rule the gym leader enforces that only one battler can enter at a time, the guards informed him as they stepped to the side to allow entrance. Gary and Leaf thought that was an extremely odd rule, but who were they to question it? The two, along with the group of cheerleaders, entered the door to the gym. As soon as the door shut behind them, the two guards immediately went back to guard the entrance. The group was greeted by an enormous room. They would go as far as to say this is largest battle room for a gym they had seen so far. It was extremely dark in the room, with the only light being a single bare bulb that illuminated a small spot on the floor. There were no windows, and the only exit appeared to be the doors behind them. They took a few tentative steps forwards before a voice boomed out to them which seemed to come from all sides. What business do you have here? It rang out. Leaf and the cheerleaders shrieked and jumped at the suddenness of the loud voice in such a big and dark room. Gary was initially startled but soon recovered. My name is Gary Oak. I am here to challenge you in a gym battle for the Earth badge. I've already gotten 7 badges and will get my last one from you, he stated. The lights soon turned on around them, though they were dim so the room was still poorly lit. They could now make out a high platform, almost 20 feet, on the other side of the room. A figure cast in darkness appeared to be sitting down calmly, stroking what seemed like a Persian. He must be the elusive gym leader. No one could make out his face, because he was too far in the shadows, but that was beside the point. Confident, aren't you? All right. I will accept your challenge, the owner of the voice said. For some reason, Gary could have sworn there was a hint of malice in his voice but chose to ignore it. It also sounded vaguely familiar. We shall do a 3-on-3 Pokemon battle. Is that acceptable for you? The Viridian gym leader asked. Yep. The shorter the gym battle, the faster I can get my Earth badge, Gary smirked. Yes. Let's hurry up and get this over with, the man agreed, though Gary could have sworn he was being mocked by the man's tone. You may choose your Pokemon first. All right. Nidoking, I choose you. Gary shouted as he released a large, bipedal Pokemon that appeared to be based on a rabbit. A Nidoking? I choose Golem, the man said as he brought a Pokeball into view and released Pokemon that was brown in color and was covered by spherical shell that seemed to be made out of solid rock. Golem, use rollout, the shadowed man ordered calmly. The Megaton Pokemon gave a roar before curling into a ball and barreling towards Nidoking. Gary, however, wasn't intimidated and even smirked. Nidoking. Don't be afraid of that rollout. Stand your ground. He yelled. Nidoking got into a battle-ready stance and held its ground for Golem. Once the fully evolved form of Goidud reached it, Nidoking reached out with its powerful arms and grabbed Golem. The great weight of Golem forced Nidoking back several feet, but it held strong and soon stopped Golem altogether. Now use Aqua Tail. Gary commanded next. He knew teaching a move like that to Nidoking would come in handy, not that it would need it to win. Nidoking's massive tail became enveloped in water, and it swung its tail around and whacked Golem right in the face. The Megaton Pokémon rolled backwards several yards until it struck the platform the gym leader was sitting on. It then slumped over in defeat after only one attack. Leaf couldn't help but raise her eyebrows at this. Was Gary just that strong of a trainer or the gym leader just that weak? Something had to be up. Gary didn't see it that way, however. He just merely gave an arrogant laugh at the gym leader. Heh. Was that all? I was expecting a bit more strategy and power from a gym leader. Who's got the force? Gary, of course. The cheerleaders praised. The Viridian gym leader returned the Golem to its Pokeball before smirking. This boy had no idea what he was fixing to be in for when this match was over. He couldn't wait to teach him a lesson for interfering with his plans for the Sylph Company. That wasn't bad. Now try your luck with this one, the man said before reaching into his suit jacket and pulling out another Pokeball. The then pressed the button to release a large crab-like Pokemon with enormous pincers, with one larger than the other and what looked like a crown on its head, a Kingler. Heh, a Kingler, huh? Return, Nidoking. Gary called before returning it. That thing isn't going to be strong enough to tackle my Arcanine. He then threw the Pokeball forward to reveal the large dog-like Pokemon. It gave a might cry before growling at the Kingler. Gary wasn't the least bit worried about the type disadvantage. Arcanine had taken out many opponents it was weak to in the past. It was one of his strongest Pokemon. Take down, Arcanine! Gary yelled. The legendary Pokemon then charged forward at full sprint before colliding with the Kingler. The large crab Pokemon was sent sailing backwards, but the gym leader wasn't done quite yet. He would toy with the boy for a little longer. He was going to give the boy a false sense of security, and then strike. Kingler, use Crab Hammer, he said. The pincer Pokemon then got up from being on its back before charging up its larger pincer and began mercilessly swinging it at Arcanine. The dog Pokemon, however, was able to easily dodge the Kingly Crab's attempts at hitting it. It gracefully leaped over or sidestepped each time. See? What did I tell you? Your Kingler is too slow. Arcanine, use Fire Blast. Gary taunted. Arcanine then opened its mouth and delivered another Fire Blast from its mouth. The extremely powerful fire attack soared a short distance and struck Kingler at almost point blank range. The pincer Pokemon was blasted backwards by the powerful attack where it landed on the floor and was defeated. Woohoo! Gary is the best. The cheerleaders cried again. That is so true, and I don't want to disappoint you. Gary said, coming up with a lame rhyme himself. Leaf couldn't help but frown at the situation. There was no way a gym leader should be this easy. It was true that Gary was an extremely powerful trainer, but this gym leader seemed to be using zero strategy and just simply ordering his Pokemon to attack. Leaf herself had never actually battled a gym leader, but even she knew enough about them to know this was unusual. She wanted to voice her concerns to Gary but knew it would only fall on deaf ears. He was on one of his ego highs right now, so there was no bringing him down. Yo! Why don't you just give up right now? There is no way you can beat me. Gary told the gym leader. The Viridian gym leader smirked again. You're absolutely right. There is no point in sending out a third Pokemon. You are a strong trainer and have earned the Earth Badge. Take it. He then tossed a badge from high above where it came falling down. Gary ran forward to catch it and took a good look at it in confusion. Sure enough, it was a real Earth badge. This surprised even Gary that the gym leader simply gave up so easily. Gary was just saying those things about quitting out of arrogance. He didn't think the gym leader actually would do it. He had been waiting several months for the Viridian gym to open again for this. Everyone was so confused about the situation that they didn't notice several other men sneaking into the room and blocking the only exit. Since I have given you the Earth badge, why don't you stick around for a little while? There is one more Pokemon I want you to meet, the man requested, but his tone suggested it was actually a command. Wait. What is this? Gary asked as he gave the gym leader a glare. You're going to give me the Earth badge and challenge me with one more Pokemon? What are you playing at? Gary? Leaf shouted, drawing his attention over to her. Something isn't right. I felt it ever since we entered this gym. We should hurry up and get out of here. Ah, you're going to leave so soon? You will hurt my special guest's feelings if you did that, the man mocked as he snapped his fingers. A door then slid open to Gary and Leaf's left to reveal a strange figure. Everyone squinted to get a better look at the Pokemon and saw it was one covered in what looked like a robot suit. Since the suit covered so much of its body, it was hard to make out any features to see what the Pokemon was like. The Pokemon's eyes glowed blue from behind the helmet, and Gary's Arcanine was lifted off of the ground and thrown into the wall behind it. The cheerleaders and Leaf had to leap out of the way so they wouldn't be hit. Arcanine! Gary cried with worry as he and Leaf pulled out their Pokédexes to see what on earth this Pokemon was. The creature's eyes glowed blue once more, and Gary and Leaf's Pokédexes were lifted from their hands and shattered before their very eyes. This Pokemon just completely destroyed their Pokédexes. The broken pieces then fell down back onto the floor while the two trainers looked on in shock. My Pokédex, Leaf trailed as tears came to her eyes. Her goal was to be able to fill up the Pokédex with every known Pokémon. She had been so close to completing the Kanto region. Now, her dream had been literally shattered, and there was nothing she could do about it. It was gone in the blink of an eye. Let's get out here, girls. Head for the exit. Gary yelled as tugged on Leaf to get her to move, but she was frozen on the spot. Finally resorting to picking her up, Gary lifted Leaf off of her feet and began to carry her as he and the cheerleaders ran to the exit, but found they were unable to leave. Several adults were blocking the exit and either had guns or pokeballs drawn. The most distinguishing feature about the adults was the uniform they wore. It had a big red R in the center of it. Gary and Leaf's face paled upon seeing that. You aren't going anywhere, Jessie smirked as she, James, Meowth, and the other Rockets stood their ground. It can't be. Team Rocket! Gary cried as he turned back up to face the shadowed man. Then that must mean you're. Indeed I am. Giovanni confirmed as he stood up and finally revealed himself from the shadows. The true identity of the Viridian gym leader is none other than I, Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket. This whole gym is controlled by us. Gary and Leaf exchanged panicked glances with each other. Now Gary realized why this man sounded so familiar. This was an incredibly bad situation. It seemed Leaf's suspicions were justified, after all. I have a score to settle with you for back at the Sylph Company, boy, Giovanni smirked. I'm not afraid of you. Gary shouted, trying to sound brave. He couldn't let himself break in front of the cheerleaders and Leaf. You should be. I told you and those other two back at Sylph Company that bad things happen to people who get in Team Rocket's way, Giovanni growled. Come on, Leaf. It looks like we will have to fight our way through, Gary declared as he pulled out all of the Pokeballs he had on him. Recovering from her shock of her Pokédex being gone, Leaf shook her head because now it looked like a fight for their lives was going to take place. She pulled out her Pokeballs. And together, they released all of their Pokemon that were traveling with them right now. Yes. Go ahead. Use as many Pokemon as you like. That will just reinforce how powerless you are before this Pokemon, Giovanni chuckled in a dark tone. We'll do just that. Gary declared. We are going to beat you and turn you into the police. Is that what you think? Giovanni smirked. I'll tell you what, if you and your friend are able to win against this Pokemon, I will let you all leave here with no opposition. How does that sound? Fine then. Gary shouted as he pointed at the mechanical Pokemon for emphasis. Attack everyone. You all, attack, also. Leaf ordered her Pokemon. Heh heh. Is that your best shot? Giovanni mocked as the 12 Pokemon charged forward to attack Mewtwo. Its eyes glowed blue once more as all of their Pokemon were lifted from the ground and caught in Mewtwo's confusion attack. All of them appeared to be in great pain as Mewtwo looked to be torturing them. Gary and Leaf looked on in horror as the Pokemon all had their teeth gritted and looked close to screaming, but found they were unable to. I don't get it. How can a Pokemon be this strong? Nothing should be able to take out all of our Pokemon like that. Gary said in terror, yet you might recall me mentioning in the Sylph Company that Team Rocket was after a Pokemon. Let's just say we succeeded in getting it. Giovanni stated. Gary racked his brain to try to remember the conversation he, Serena, and Ash had with Giovanni a while back. He told them they were in there for projects for the Master Ball, which would allow them to capture the cloned Pokemon, Mewtwo. Gary had heard stories of it, but thought it was just a rumor, but Giovanni now confirmed it was true. You mean to tell me that this is Mewtwo? Gary cried in horror. What? Leaf yelled as she looked at Gary in shock. She thought along the same lines as Gary that Mewtwo was just a rumor. Don't waste your time, Giovanni said with an evil smile. This is the ultimate Pokemon. It can never be defeated. Gary and Leaf's eyes widened as they saw the Pokemon give one last burst of psychic energy that was coming straight for them. The attack met its targets, and everything turned to blackness for the two. Mewtwo was once more back at the rocket base. It had battled Pokemon after Pokemon. It had helped complete this man's missions one after the other, most recently capture those humans after what they called a gym match. Despite this, Mewtwo still had not discovered why it was here. It had been with Giovanni long enough to know by now, right? As Mewtwo looked up at the human it dared to trust, it could see Giovanni staring at it with a strange expression on his face. It looked like the man was admiring a piece of art or looking at his favorite toy. It wasn't a look that an equal would look to another equal. For a while, neither of them said anything, but after a minute, Giovanni finally spoke. You have done well so far with what you have been assigned to do, Giovanni stated. Mewtwo said nothing as it continued to watch Giovanni. It didn't need a pat on the back from this human, partners or not. I needed answers. I will require your assistance a great deal now, Giovanni began. Another errand for this human? Unless it had something to do with discovering its destiny, Mewtwo did not want to hear it. There has been a human I have completely despised for a long time now. His name is Ash Ketchum, Giovanni continued. You see, he has gotten in our way too many times to count and is now considered a direct threat to the Team Rocket organization. He needs to be eliminated. And what do you want me to do about it? Mewtwo asked as its eyes narrowed. Why should it care about this Ash Ketchum? It was just another human. I need to you find this boy and bring him to me. Kill his friends if you have to, but bring me Ash Ketchum alive, Giovanni said maliciously. I have put off punishing this boy long enough, but now that I have you, the time to strike is now. That was all Mewtwo was doing again? Another fetch quest? It has done those for this human quite enough. Time after time Giovanni said it would see its destiny fulfilled, but this wouldn't help it get any closer to knowing its purpose. Mutuo decided it has put off this question long enough. It was time to be direct and specifically ask Giovanni when it would discover its destiny. Pushing this so-called Ash Ketchum away from its thoughts at the moment, Mutuo finally spoke. You have shown me how to focus my power, and for that I thank you, Mutuo began. However, you still haven't shown me what my purpose for being here is yet. Tell me. Now. Isn't it obvious? Giovanni sneered. Giovanni's tone caught Mutuo off guard. I don't understand, it said. You were created for me and me only. Your purpose is to serve me, your master, and help me with my affairs, Giovanni said. What? Surely this man was joking. He had said Mutuo would discover its destiny through him. Giovanni wasn't just using it, also, right? That cannot be, Mutuo muttered. You said we would work together as partners and equals. You believed that? How naive. You were created by humans to serve humans. You could never be our equal. You are my servant, and I am your master. Get used to it. Giovanni stated with a smirk. Mutuo looked down at the ground with, was this hurt it felt? Humans were just using it again, after all. Was it really nothing more than an experiment or fighting tool to them? Was there not a single human or Pokemon on this entire planet who genuinely cared about it? It was then Mutuo realized how alone it really was. The only ones who ever seemed to care about it were now gone. The single human it had decided to put its trust in once more has also betrayed it. Mutuo felt itself grow angry again. Humans have used it for the last time. This cannot be my destiny. Mutuo shouted mentally. You have lied to me, human. I will not accept this. Mutuo then began to break the various cords that were holding it in place and destroying the suit from the inside out. It would break free. Giovanni's eyes widened at what was taking a place and immediately pressed a button to send more mechanical hands after it to restrain it. This couldn't be happening. This Pokemon was only supposed to obey, not think for itself. Surely Archer wasn't correct about Mutuo. Stop this at once. Your master commands it. Giovanni shouted. You are not my master. Mutuo bellowed the last word. It then completely shattered the robotic hands once more and broke free from the wires restraining it. Mutuo then blew an enormous hole in the roof, causing debris to rain down. The noise alerted several other rocket members to the scene as they arrived in the room. Upon seeing what was taking place, they each threw a Pokeball that contained a ghost Pokemon in an effort to subdue the outraged Pokemon. Mutuo's eyes narrowed at the ghost Pokemon and immediately launched a psychic attack at them which instantly knocked them all out. It then shot out through the hole it created as fast as it could. Bits of the robotic suit fell off piece by piece as it flew higher and higher into the sky. It wanted to get as far away from these humans as possible. It will trust them no more. From now on, Mutuo would stand alone. Meanwhile, the rocket building was heavily damaged due to the havoc Mutuo had caused. Giovanni and his Persian stared off angrily after Mutuo as they watched it get further and further away. He had been knocked backwards by the strong force of Mutuo but wasn't injured. How dare that thing defy him? Sir. Are you okay? A female voice asked. Giovanni turned to see it was Jessie, James, and Meowth who were running towards them. He was not in the mood to deal with them at the moment. I am fine. We have more pressing things to deal with at the moment. That artificial creature will not get away from us unpunished. Giovanni growled as he stood up. Yes, sir. What is it you want us to do at the moment? James asked with a salute. We now have two problems to deal with and shall address them immediately. Get Ariana and Petrol and a group of rocket members. Send them after Mutuo immediately. We will take it by force with anything necessary. Tell them to take the master ball we made. Giovanni yelled. Understood, sir. What else? Jesse asked. Send another battalion of Team Rocket members away for the moment to lay in waiting. This will no doubt attract unwanted attention. We need a special getaway in case something goes wrong. Giovanni continued. Of course. James responded. The rest of us will take care of Ash Ketchum. I'm tired of that child being the foil of our plans, even indirectly. He is a parasite of bad luck. Even when I mention his name, my servant leaves me. He shall be dealt with right now. Giovanni continued. How do you plan to get that twerp to us? Meowth asked curiously. Giovanni's eyes narrowed. We shall exploit what he holds dear, his mother. Proton and Archer will be sent to Pallet Town to retrieve her. Understood. We shall carry these plans out immediately. The three rockets saluted before they and the other grunts left the room. Giovanni stood by himself for a bit. It was true that those three failed many times before, but they had their uses. He then gave one more look at the sky which now shone through the new hole in the roof. Mutuo may have gotten away, but Giovanni would make sure that thing paid for defying him, and as for Ash Ketchum, he shall be taken care of, as well. That boy was collecting gym badges, was he? A dark smirk came to Giovanni's face as an idea came to his mind. I think I know the perfect way to eliminate that boy, Giovanni mused to himself so only the Persian could hear. A gym battle for the Earth badge. With that, Giovanni left the room to prepare for the arrival of Delia Ketchum. He couldn't wait to finally talk to her again. She will know soon enough how wrong it was to try to run away from him. The doors behind him slid shut, and the room was empty. Meanwhile, Mutuo continued to fly as far away as it could. It was completely through with trusting humans, and other Pokemon, as well. As Mutuo flew, it soon spotted the island that was all too familiar to it, the one it was created on. Yes. This would be the ideal spot to begin. Mutuo soon landed on the island that was still littered with debris from the lab building and stared around it. It then gave a look out to the ocean and narrowed its eyes. It shall plot its revenge here, where it all began. Who am I? Mutuo thought. Humans have not helped me. I will find my own purpose. Yes. Mutuo was completely alone, and everything else was against it. It shall destroy everything that is against it. It could trust no one anymore. I shall purge this planet of all who oppose me, humans and Pokemon alike, Mutuo continued to itself. The world will heed my warning. The reign of Mutuo will soon begin.